A young man wakes up in a strange place after hearing a sound effect that reminds him of a video game. Without even opening his eyes, he hears a girl say that he is a drop, something like a chunk of meat shaped like a person. The moment she says she is going to cut that meat, the young man screams, startling the girl so badly that she desperately backs away after realizing he is actually human. He tells her that should have been pretty obvious just by looking at his face. But what she cannot understand is why a slime dropped a human being. Normally, when they are defeated, they drop bean sprouts. The guy wants to know what the hell she means by slime and drop, and his questions genuinely confuse the girl, since those things seem completely obvious to her. Suddenly, a slime appears in the middle of this mysterious dungeon, so the girl rushes after it with her massive hammer. She takes a hit and loses half of her HP, but manages to strike back in time, crushing the slime with her weapon. As the creature disappears, it leaves behind exactly what the girl had mentioned, a bean sprout. Taking the opportunity, she explains that everyone knows level 1 slimes in Tululu drop bean sprouts. The boy replies that clearly not everyone knows that, and this realization makes him look around in panic, demanding to know where the hell he is and what is going on, seeing that the grown man is starting to lose it. The girl explains that basically everything in this world is dropped by monsters inside dungeons, including food like those bean sprouts. He asks whether he is no longer in Japan, on planet Earth. But the girl has absolutely no idea what he is talking about. After walking a little farther, she smashes another slime and gets another bean sprout. The boy asks why she only hunts those blue blobs, and she explains that they are the only monsters on the first floor. She is too weak to go any deeper, but once she levels up, she believes she will be able to explore the second or third floor. Of course, the guy also has no clue what this talk about levels means, so the girl uses a status board on the dungeon wall to give him a quick lesson. She shows him her current stats, and at least he understands that it is something like an RPG system. He notices that her HP is rank B and her strength is rank C, while everything else is lower. That makes her seem like the kind of character built around raw physical power. On the second page, the girl shows him her drop ranks, which are unfortunately still rank F for most items. The higher the rank, the easier it is to get drops, and the larger the quantity of items that drop. In her case, her highest rank is plants, which is rank E. That is why she has been collecting bean sprouts. After showing him her status window, she teaches him how to check his own stats. The moment he touches the magic orb at the base of the board, the young man reveals the most pathetic stats anyone has ever seen. Literally everything is rank F. But that is not even the worst part. The section displaying his level reads 1/1, meaning his maximum level is only level 1. When they move to the second page, the girl is horrified by how awful his drop rates are. She explains that the higher the letter in the alphabet, the stronger the rank is, then sadly points out that the boy only has rank S in every drop category: plants, animals, minerals, and magic alike. The boy asks her to slow down for a second. As far as he remembers, rank S is supposed to be higher than rank A in RPGs. To find out whether this world works differently, he borrows his companion's hammer, but there is no way he can even lift the 100-kilo thing. Instead, the girl lends him a much simpler weapon. The system then announces that Ryota has acquired a bamboo spear. When another slime appears, Ryota finally gets the chance to put his plan into action. He charges at the monster, but since he has absolutely no talent for fighting, the guy struggles like crazy just to hit the target. Still, after a lot of effort, he manages to drive the spear into the small creature and defeat it. Then the drop he had been waiting to check appears, a massive pile of bean sprouts. Shocked, the girl says she has never seen such an enormous drop in her 2 years of dungeon crawling. That confirms Ryota's suspicion that rank S is indeed higher than rank A. He asks whether she has ever seen a rank S before, but she never has. In fact, she mistook it for a very low rank. At that moment, Ryota's stomach growls loudly, so the girl invites him to grab something to eat. Right there in the dungeon, the young woman prepares bean sprouts with La Yu chili oil. According to Ryota, it is the perfect combination for someone starving like him. Honestly, all he wants now is a cold beer to go with it. He asks whether his companion drinks, but she tells him alcohol is far too expensive for her. Then she serves him a bowl of soup. Ryota takes a sip and makes such a strange face that the girl worries he did not like it. But that is not the problem. With tears in his eyes that he desperately tries to hide, Ryota says it has been a long time since he last shared a hot meal with someone. He used to leave home early and work unpaid overtime until late at night. His meals were always cold food bought from a convenience store. That lifestyle ruined his health and eventually put him in the hospital. Then, after piling up debt to both his company and the hospital, he was forced to work even more overtime. One day, he was so exhausted that he passed out at work after already missing the last train home. That was when he woke up after being dropped by a slime, just as the girl with the giant hammer had said. Thinking back on his life up until that point, Ryota realizes none of it was worth it. The final days he spent trapped in that routine had been absolute hell. Seeing how sad he is, the girl gives him a comforting hug and says that, according to something she once heard, a person's efforts are always rewarded. It may take time, but eventually the reward will come, and the longer someone works hard before receiving it, the greater the reward will be. She compares it to pulling back your fingers before flicking something. The more tension you build, the stronger the flick becomes. So, in her mind, the most incredible possibility of all is being reborn and receiving your reward in the next life. The girl believes Ryota must have worked incredibly hard, so all he can do now is hope for the best. Hearing those words, Ryota finally breaks down crying. After pulling himself together, he realizes he needs to find somewhere to stay. The girl recommends looking for an inn in the town right outside the dungeon. As for her, she plans to sleep in the dungeon itself. Since her drop rate is low, she has to work twice as hard just to gather enough items to sell and survive. Her dream is to rent an apartment one day, but she knows it will take a while. Before they part ways, she gives Ryota the bamboo spear for good. According to her, it is dangerous to be unarmed in a dungeon. Even so, Ryota promises that he will repay her someday. The girl tells him he can always find her on the first floor of Tululu. Ryota asks the kind girl for her name, and she introduces herself as Emily Brown. In return, he tells her that his name is Sato Ryota. Emily mishears it as Yoda, since she has never heard a name like that before. The next day, Ryota begins to understand how this society works. Their currency is called the Pylo, and he earned 200 Pylos from that enormous pile of bean sprouts he got in the dungeon. A night at an inn costs 2,000 Pylos, while a bowl of what looks like ramen costs 500. So Ryota gets to work and heads back into Tululu Dungeon to earn more money and start a new life in this strange world. When he looks at his terrible stats, he worries that his life will be miserable all over again. But with a rankus drop rate, he can gather a solid amount of items to sell. Maybe this is his chance to finally live with some dignity. 3 days later, Ryota Sato takes Emily to a small house he managed to rent through his hard work. To be honest, it is a very old house, but that is exactly why he could afford to rent it for 20,000 Pylos a month. Ryota hands Emily the key and tells her that she will be living there. She does not need to worry about the rent because he will take care of it. Emily panics and refuses to accept such a thing. With dark circles under his eyes from overworking himself, Ryota closes her hand around the key and insists that it is payment for the soup she gave him that day. He knows it is not the best house in the world, but he hopes she can be comfortable there. Emily notices that Ryota's hands are covered in blisters. Seeing how hard he worked for her, she decides she will make soup for him every day. But for that to happen, they will have to live together. Some time later, Ryota weighs all the loot he gathered from his hunts and earns 1,967 Pylos. The clerk, Urza, who always gets his name wrong and calls him Joda, remembers that he constantly brings in huge amounts of bean sprouts. Because of that, she rounds his payment up to 2,000 Pylos. Ryota says he is thinking about trying his luck on the second floor. Urza explains that the monsters in Tululu drop carrots there. But she also mentions that a new dungeon has recently appeared. Ryota is shocked to learn that dungeons can just appear out of nowhere in this world, and Urza confirms that it happens every now and then. Its name is pretty difficult to pronounce, though. She thinks it is called Nihonium or something like that. The Neptunes are investigating what drops there, and they are the most powerful organization in Sekiro. Ryota cuts the conversation short because the people in line are starting to get impatient. But before he can leave, Urza gathers all her courage and asks him out for a drink at a new place around the corner. Ryota turns her down with a smile and simply says, "See you next time." After he leaves, one of Urza's co-workers teases the poor girl for getting rejected. As Ryota approaches the front door of his house, he reflects on the fact that it has been decades since he had someone waiting for him when he came home. He does not even know what to say when he opens the door, but Emily saves him by naturally greeting him with her usual warmth. She has also cleaned the house perfectly, since it is her first time having a home of her own. she got a little carried away. Emily gives him a warm towel, which Ryota places over his eyes and immediately feels like he has caught a tiny glimpse of paradise. As if that were not enough, she has made tea too, and she is doing everything she can to help. Ryota worries that she might tire herself out, but Emily loves the novelty of having a home and wants to make everything work. Changing the subject, Ryota tells her about a dungeon called Nihonium that appeared nearby. Emily has already heard that the place is no good because nothing drops there. Since literally everything in this world comes from drops, Ryota becomes especially curious about what could possibly be inside that dungeon. So the next day, he heads there. After walking for quite a while without finding a single living soul, he comes across a skeleton. The monster shows off its strength by smashing a stone pillar while trying to hit Ryota. The skeleton raises its hand again, and Ryota knows it is probably time to say goodbye. Luckily, another stone pillar falls on top of the monster at the last possible moment, saving him just in time. The skeleton is still alive, so Ryota takes advantage of the fact that it is trapped beneath the rubble and finishes it off after stabbing it with his spear countless times. The enemy drops a seed. As soon as Ryota picks it up, it disappears and increases his maximum HP by 1 point. Later, Emily meets up with Yoda and is stunned when she checks his status board. His HP has increased even though he has not leveled up. After realizing he can grow stronger somehow, Ryota Sato returns to that dungeon and defeats more skeletons with Emily's help. The problem is that whenever Emily defeats a skeleton, the seed does not drop, and when she tries to pick up the seeds Ryota gets, her hand simply passes right through them. On top of that, Ryota starts to notice that only he can hear the female system voice announcing things like his HP increasing. When Emily checks his status board and says this should be impossible, Ryota agrees. In this world, an item that drops but can only be touched by certain people would completely disrupt the balance of things. It should not be possible, yet it is happening. Emily jumps for joy, having no idea it was possible to get stronger without leveling up. Ryota concludes that this dungeon must exist specifically for people with rankus drops to increase their stats. Another day, while eating food made by his companion, Ryota says that Emily's home cooking is the best thing in the world. Emily asks whether young Yoda will be coming home late again, and he says yes. He has been working hard in Nihonium lately, and his HP has now reached rank S. With that achievement under his belt, he plans to head to Tululu's second floor and see just how much stronger he has become. Despite being happy for him, Emily admits she is worried. Whenever Ryota commits himself to something, he tends to go overboard. He has been coming home very late every day recently, so she asks him to consider returning a little earlier. That makes Ryota think about how nobody ever worried about him when he worked at that office. Wanting to make Emily happy, he promises he will do as she asks. The next day, Ryota heads to the second floor of the dungeon and finds a slime stronger than the usual ones, but his rank S HP allows him to tank the creature's attacks with ease, leading him to victory. Just as Urza said, the slime drops a carrot. Soon after, another green slime appears, but as it approaches Ryota, a fireball flies through the corridor and destroys it. A trio of adventurers then shows up, checks Ryota's stats using an electronic device, and laughs in his face. Before leaving, they tell him to stay on the first floor if he does not want to die for nothing. After they leave, Ryota notices that a girl with strange animal ears is now standing behind him. She heard that he is level 1 and makes a point of saying that she hates low-level people right before unnecessarily smacking him on the forehead. Then, out of nowhere, she turns around and walks away as if nothing happened, leaving poor Ryota Sato wondering what the hell is going on in this ridiculous place. At least he gets his reward when he returns home. After selling most of his carrots at Swallow's Gratitude, he earns 8,000 pylos in a single day. If he can hunt like that every day, Ryota will make 240,000 pylos a month, which is far more money than he ever earned before. In the middle of all this, the same animal-eared girl knocks on his door. After smacking his forehead again, she reminds him that she hates low-level people. Ryota tells her it is not very polite to go to someone's house just to say that, but the girl completely ignores him and, with the sweetest expression in the world, declares that she loves Ryota Sato. Emily asks who she is, but Ryota has absolutely no idea. In fact, he could never have imagined that bunny girls were just a normal thing in this world. Out of nowhere, the bunny grabs one of the adventurers who mocked Ryota in the dungeon and flicks him in the forehead. This time, though, things get really ugly. As Ryota and Emily scream in horror, The bunny explains that she gave him the exact same flick she gave Ryota, but for some reason, this low-level guy is still alive. Not understanding why only makes her even more irritated, while Ryota assumes it must be because of his S-rank HP. Changing the subject, the owner of the house wants to know what this pest is doing there. The bunny then pulls a massive carrot out of her shirt. Apparently, while Ryota was carrying his pile of carrots home, he dropped one on the ground, and some nosy little shadow snatched it. That shadow, of course, turned out to be this unbearable bunny girl. One carrot wasn't enough for her, so she went looking for more, and if there's one thing Ryota's house has, it's carrots. Ryota is in no mood to chat and tries to throw the rude girl out, but Emily invites her to eat with them. Naturally, their guest isn't about to waste an invitation like that. Emily shows the bunny how to peel a carrot and chop it into thin pieces. Once it's sliced, the carrot is lightly cooked so it keeps its crunch. Then, Emily makes a sauce using meat and the carrot greens themselves. After mixing it all with the noodles, they end up with a 3-color carrot soba, best enjoyed with bean sprout and carrot soup. Once the meal is served and everyone is ready to eat, Ryota asks whether the girl's ears are real. She ignores him completely, giving food her full attention instead. The moment she takes a bite, the bunny girl is sent straight to carrot heaven. Not surprisingly, she immediately starts calling Emily a goddess. Even though Emily thinks that is a bit excessive, she tells their guest to eat as much as she wants because she made plenty for everyone. After finishing her meal and saying thanks, the bunny simply stands up and says, "Bye." Emily invites her to come back more often, and the little bunny assures her that she will. Once their visitor leaves, Emily thanks Ryota for keeping her company. Before moving into this house, she always ate alone, and being able to share meals with other people makes her incredibly happy. Ryota instantly realizes that he used to live the same way. Either way, Emily asks if they can keep eating together from now on. The following day, on the second floor of Nihonium Dungeon, Ryota Sato reflects on how cozy his new life in this world has become. But if he wants to protect that life, he has to deal with terrifying, deadly creatures inside some random cave in the middle of nowhere. When an undead monster attacks him, Ryota quickly stabs it with his spear. Unfortunately for him, the flimsy bamboo weapon snaps in half, and the monster is still very much alive. The zombie punches him in the face, but thanks to his S-rank HP, Ryota barely feels it. He decides to return the favor, only to get his hand covered in disgusting brown slime after punching the zombie in the face. Obviously, he would rather have a long-range weapon, but since he has no other choice, he manages just fine with his hands and feet. In fact, he ends the fight with a kick. Until then, Ryota had only managed to level up his HP on the first floor. Now, he is curious to see what this zombie seed will give him. He absorbs the item and hears the system announce that his strength has increased by 1 point. While that is happening, Ryota spots none other than yesterday's bunny woman at the back of the cave. She walks over to flick the poor guy in the forehead again. But more importantly, she wants to know what kind of drop he just got. Before answering, Ryota remembers that everyone believes Nihonium does not drop anything. The only reason he can get items here is because of his S-rank drop rate. For a moment, he wonders whether he should tell her the truth. Then he realizes she could not care less about seeds that increase strength. She only wants carrots. With an expression that is somehow both seductive and threatening, the bunny asks, "Death or carrot?" Ryota panics when he realizes his life depends on a vegetable. Meanwhile, the girl insists that this garbage dungeon does not have what she wants, so it is time to head back to Tululu. Ryota asks her to wait for him at the Swallow's Gratitude, buying himself some time while he worries about finding enough carrots. After leaving the dungeon, Ryota is indeed carrying several healthy vegetables. Since his strength rose from F rank to D rank, defeating slimes has become much faster and easier, giving him enough time to gather plenty of items. When he enters the Swallow's Gratitude, he finds the crazy girl waiting for him. As he walks closer, the people around them can barely believe that he is standing so near the killer bunny. Then, when she falls in love with one of his carrots, everyone is shocked that the carrot addict actually accepted one. Disgusted by the way she starts devouring the vegetable, Ryota asks what exactly is wrong with this menace. Jealous, Urza walks over and innocently asks whether Sato knows this person. He explains that she is not exactly an acquaintance. Apparently, the bunny is attached to him because he gives her carrots to eat. At that point, the waitress at the Swallow's Gratitude desperately offers to buy those carrots for double their normal price. Ryota does not understand the sudden madness, so Urza explains that the girl is Eve Callisleader, an adventurer whose killing technique, Excalibur, is supposedly powerful enough to split a rock in half. On top of that, Eve is famous for being obsessed with carrots. In the dungeons near Secro that drop them, there are floors nobody but her can clear. Her catchphrase is "death or carrot," and people say that some adventurers have genuinely died after giving her bad carrots. Because of that, the kind of carrots Eve likes can be sold for far more than usual. Naturally, the people at the Swallow's Gratitude want them at any cost. Urza offers 15,000 pylos for each carrot. Ryota has 30 carrots, so he does the math, 450,000 pylos. That is an absurd amount of money. Then the one responsible for all this demands even more carrots. Ryota argues that he is done working for the day, so Eve makes sure to point out just how much she hates this low-level idiot. The killer bunny tries to smack him in the forehead again, but this time Ryota stops her hand with his own. The entire establishment watches in shock. Ryota calmly corrects her, saying that his name is not low-level, it is Ryota Sato. Eve does not care. She asks about the carrots, and Ryota explains that he promised Emily he would stop working early today. Still, he promises to bring Eve more food tomorrow. Eve repeats her slogan, "Carrot or death." Getting the message loud and clear, Ryota assures her that he will bring back plenty of vegetables. One day later, inside Tululu Dungeon, Ryota Sato and Emily Brown fill a huge backpack with fresh carrots. Since their work is not over yet, Sato looks down one of the floor's corridors and spots a female adventurer fighting a slime beside her teammate. She strikes it with her axe, but the blade does not cut the creature at all. Their captain gets furious and assumes the two youngsters are slacking off. The adventurers grab the poor slime while the officer approaches with his sword raised and delivers the finishing blow. Afterward, he orders them to keep moving, but his students are exhausted and beg for a break, while the captain keeps calling them weak. He says that when he was young, he spent weeks trapped inside this dungeon, and that was how he became strong. The girl argues that she has barely slept, but the captain claims he is doing it for their own good. According to him, it is the only way they will toughen up enough to face bigger challenges in the future. The young adventurers apologize and continue the mission, even though they can barely stay on their feet. Ryota watches the entire thing from hiding, and the captain reminds him of the boss from his old company. That man loved assigning impossible tasks and claiming it was all for the employees' benefit. Apparently, people like that exist in this world too. Emily walks up to Ryota and says that he looks a little pale, but he insists that nothing is wrong. Unlike those two poor adventurers, Emily and Ryota take a break to fill their stomachs. Their mood could not be better when they open their lunch boxes and admire the beautifully arranged food inside. Then Eve Callisleader suddenly comes running in at an absurd speed and gives their lunch an unmistakably begging look. Despite the audacity of this crazy girl, Emily and Sato happily share their food with her. Emily even gives Eve a carrot pudding she made herself. Ryota mentions that the breaded cutlet is delicious, and Emily explains that she used sweet potato flour for the coating. The seasoning, however, is a secret. Ryota feels completely relaxed during this pleasant lunch break. But then the captain's two exhausted students show up again, and their superior is still yelling at them. He says it is unforgivable for youngsters to show such laziness inside a sacred dungeon. According to him, even items have spirits, and an adventurer's effort affects their quality. Therefore, anything dropped by lazy people will be terrible. At that moment, Eve walks over, cuts a carrot in half, and gives one piece to each of the young adventurers. They are both moved and delighted by how incredible it tastes, while the captain gets furious at their audacity. In response, Eve says she hates people who do not understand carrots. She adds that carrots taste good even when nobody suffers for them. The man threatens to hit her, but Eve quickly raises her arm and presses her outstretched fingers against his neck like a blade. Then she declares that low-levels carrots are the best. After having all the wind taken out of his sails, the captain turns around and orders his subordinates to leave. After that whole scene, Eve goes back to eating as if nothing happened. Ryota does not let it slide, though, and thanks her for what she did. In return, Eve gives the poor guy several slaps on the head and demands even more carrots tomorrow. After a long day of harvesting, even though Eve ate a good portion of their haul, the pair still manages to bring plenty of carrots to sell at the Swallow's Gratitude. Seeing them struggle to carry so much stuff, Urza suggests they buy a magic cart, which would make their work much more efficient. Ryota loves the idea, so after leaving, He heads straight to the shop Ursa recommended. Inside, they are greeted by a very young child. Ryota asks where her parents are, and she says her father is in the back, working on some modifications. She calls out to him. The man appears and praises Olga for doing such a great job looking after the store. When he learns that the customers are interested in a magic cart, the shop owner recommends one equipped with a monster detector. Since he tuned it himself, he guarantees that it works perfectly. Excited by the idea, Ryota asks how much this thing costs. The seller gives him the price, 10 million pylos. Emily and Ryota are stunned. The owner explains that even the most basic carts cost between 2 and 3 million. With no money to buy one, the two leave the store empty-handed. Still, they believe that one day they will save enough to bring one of those magic carts home. Suddenly, they hear the ground shaking in the distance and people screaming about something called a lost. Sato asks what a lost is, and Emily explains that they are monsters that appear when dungeon drops are left in areas with very few people around. Then Ryota sees a giant gorilla appear in front of him and destroy the roof of a house with a single punch. Even the adventurers are running away in desperation. Ryota points out that they should theoretically be the ones protecting the city. Emily explains that lost monsters never drop items. So many adventurers believe fighting such a powerful creature is not worth it if there is no reward. In the middle of the chaos, the cart shop owner runs by with Olga and tells Emily and Ryota to run too. However, they notice that Ursa is lying on the ground near the lost. Just as the gorilla is about to deliver a fatal punch, Ryota Sato steps in front of her and stops the blow with unbelievable strength. Still, Ryota knows he will not be able to hold it back for long. Then Eve appears alongside the three loudmouth adventurers from Tululu's second floor, and they attack the monster from behind, drawing its full attention. Ryota helps Ursa up. She says she is fine, but then looks around at her city and laments the destruction. Ryota promises that he will kill the lost and will not let it destroy everything. Finally, Emily Brown steps in front of her friend with her enormous hammer and vows to help. Ryota Sato runs toward the giant gorilla and tells the others to hold the beast down. Even though the adventurers already fighting tell him to stay away before he gets hurt. The monster is about to throw a rock at Ryota, but Emily smashes it apart with her hammer. Eve joins in and blocks another strike from the lost. Then, every adventurer combines their efforts to restrain the giant, creating the opening Ryota needs to attack head-on. Ryota leaps into the air and literally headbutts the monster in the forehead. Then he lands a devastating punch to its stomach, making the giant collapse like it was nothing. After the victory, the people celebrate the brave adventurers who risked their lives to save Sekiro. Seeing their unexpected reaction, Ryota reflects that nobody had ever been happy about something he did. Maybe he had never truly managed to do anything for anyone before. But in this world, it feels like everything has been turned upside down. Then, suddenly, Ryota hears the sound of an item drop. Emily said lost monsters never dropped anything. But Ryota had already obtained loot in Nihonium Dungeon, where everyone claimed it was impossible. Curious, he walks over to the spot where the gorilla died and is stunned by what he finds. It was a weapon that simply should not exist in this world, at least, not in the hands of a kid like him. With that said, Ryota heads down to the second floor of Nihonium with a revolver in hand. The moment an undead creature gets close, he fires his first shot and blows its shoulder apart. His second shot finishes the job, and he quickly realizes that life is about to get a whole lot easier from now on. 3 more zombies come at him, so the boy opens fire and empties the cylinder. The lost one drops spare bullets, but since he has no idea when he will be able to restock, Ryota knows he needs to conserve his ammo. After leaving that dungeon, he heads to Tululu with Emily. The moment the girl misses a hammer strike on a slime, her partner is right there, unloading a round into the monster to make up for her mistake. At lunch, Emily says his weapon is genuinely incredible, nothing like anything she has ever seen. Ryota tells her that thanks to her, his strength has risen to rank B, so they might be ready to try the next floor. The thought of taking that next step is more than enough to motivate him. Putting that aside, Ryota notices the carrots he picked up as drops and mentions that Eve did not come by today. Still, they should keep the vegetables just in case, since the rabbit girl has a habit of showing up at their house. Speaking of food, Ryota compliments Emily's packed lunches, so she pours him some tea to keep his mouth from getting dry. As he drinks it, he can feel a sense of calm slowly wash over him. When they reach the next floor, he asks whether she has been there before so he can prepare himself for what is waiting ahead. Emily says she has never been there herself. but she knows the monsters on this floor are called cockroach slimes, and they drop pumpkins. Ryota is already sick of seeing slimes everywhere, but he admits he is looking forward to eating some pumpkin. They walk a little farther, and he sees cockroaches crawling all over the place. That is when he realizes the slimes are actually those disgusting bugs. Completely revolted, Ryota thinks any girl would be running for her life on the 3rd floor right about now. Then, out of nowhere, Emily Brown slams her hammer into the ground and sends several cockroach slimes straight to the afterlife. Ryota tells her to take it easy, but she stares ahead with a terrifying expression, giving off a dark aura as she says, "This is the only way to stop the tragedy from spreading." Fueled by pure hatred, she wipes out nearly every cockroach on the floor. Once she collects the drops, Ryota tells his partner they should head back up to the 2nd floor. He does not want to see her wearing that terrifying face anymore. But suddenly, Emily stops walking and scares the life out of him. Hundreds of cockroaches start pouring out from beneath some rubble, pushing the girl completely over the edge. As she enters berserker mode, she warns him that she may never become human again. Her body and soul have been horribly corrupted by the presence of the cockroach slimes. Terrified of losing his companion to that sinister transformation, Ryota pulls out his revolver and shows off impossible aim, never missing a single bug. He has probably never focused this hard in his entire life. He cannot afford to miss even one shot, and only God knows how many bullets he burns through in the process. At least they get enough pumpkins to fill around 8 wagons, even though there is obviously no way they can carry all of them out. On top of that, Emily starts showing signs of going crazy again, making Ryota even more nervous. At that exact moment, Eve Callous Leader bursts through the mountain of pumpkins, forming a wall at the entrance to the 3rd floor with her signature move. Without wasting any time, she says she came for the low-level carrots. After selling some of the pumpkins at Swallow's gratitude, the pair returns to pick up the rest of the produce they had taken outside the dungeon. Unfortunately, half of it has already been eaten, suggesting that some animal got a free snack. Emily is convinced it was those cursed cockroaches again, and to prove it, she violently slams her hammer into the ground. The hole she creates immediately starts spewing the creatures from hell. Ryota panics because they are not even inside the dungeon anymore. Meanwhile, with flames in her eyes, Emily declares that her entire life has been preparing her for this moment. The same genius who said he needed to save his bullets because he had no way to replace them gets the brilliant idea to pull out his revolver and wildly squeeze the trigger until he has nothing left. Now, not only is he out of ammunition, but he also has to somehow deal with Brown's completely uncontrollable rage. To avoid that, the boy plays his last card, killing the cockroaches the old-fashioned way, with his shoes. After an unknown amount of time, Ryota Sato finally succeeds in wiping out the insects. Now that Emily is back to normal, she apologizes for turning into a lunatic whenever she sees those things. Exhausted, Sato tells her it is not her fault, then discovers some great news. Revolver bullets can apparently drop right out of the ground. Later that night, Urza explains that if you leave dropped items in an area with no people around, monsters will start appearing nearby. Ryota remembers Emily mentioning something like this on the day of the gorilla, but he simply did not process it at the time. Either way, he figures this might be a way to force lost monsters to appear. Urza takes the opportunity to invite him to try a new restaurant that just opened in town. But Ryota is so completely trapped inside his own thoughts that he ignores her invitation and rushes off. Eager to test his theory, he heads straight into a forest, places a carrot on the ground, and waits to see what happens. Out of nowhere, a swirl of wind and dust forms around the vegetable. But instead of the lost monster Ryota was hoping for, Eve Callous Leader appears and she wastes no time taking the bait. Ryota complains that the carrot was part of a plan, but Callous Leader firmly declares that it is hers. Even if the sky turns into earth and the earth turns into sky, she will not give it up. Ryota is shocked that Eve managed to say more than 5 words in one sentence. Then, to his absolute disappointment, he watches this crazy woman eat 9 of the 10 carrots he brought for the experiment. After she leaves, he uses his final carrot to see what will happen. A while later, he watches it transform into a green slime from Tululu's 2nd floor. Ryota shoots the slime, killing it and making it drop 10 revolver bullets. Happily collecting the ammo, the boy gets a great idea for the other creatures he has encountered on his journey so far. The next day, gunshots can be heard outside Nihonium's 1st floor. After defeating an enemy, Ryota absorbs the seed it dropped and gets a system message saying his maximum HP has increased by 0 points. Frustrated, he reflects that turning monsters with no drops into lost monsters and then defeating them could lead to something interesting with his unique ability. When he absorbs another seed and gets the exact same result, Ryota thinks he might be able to take the seed outside without it disappearing. Unfortunately, that does not work either. So, he decides it is time to meet Emily and Tululu and get back to their usual routine. When he reaches the dungeon entrance, Ryota is caught off guard by a skeleton standing dangerously close to him. With no time or space to draw his gun, he is forced into hand-to-hand combat. He manages to kick the monster hard, but accidentally sends it flying out through Nihonium's entrance. Ryota expects the creature to turn into a lost monster, but instead, it vanishes within seconds as if it were magic. Later, Urza explains that this is what happens whenever dungeon monsters leave the dungeon. Otherwise, there would be lost monsters everywhere. In fact, they disappear if they move to another floor as well, which is why each floor only has one type of monster. Looking down with a slightly emotional expression, the receptionist says Ryota's ability is impressive, but it is also shocking how much he does not know. Still, she admits that contrast is kind of attractive. Of course, the big guy is not paying attention to a word the poor girl says, and he bolts out the door again. After returning to Nihonium, Ryota lures a skeleton close to the entrance and kicks it outside. But before the monster can disappear, he shoots it with his revolver. This time, it is defeated as a lost monster and drops several freezing bullets. Surprised, Ryota picks up his new loot and tests it on a nearby tree. The moment he fires, a massive sheet of ice spreads out and freezes the entire tree, covering a large area around the target. Later, on Tululu's second floor, he shoots a slime and freezes it, giving Emily all the time in the world to rush in and crush the opponent with her massive warhammer. When this classic video game strategy actually works, Ryota realizes it is useful in this world too. Emily is left speechless by her partner's new ability, and he gives her a rough explanation of how he got it. Since the bullets are rare, he makes it clear that he will use normal rounds most of the time. He will save the ice bullets for specific situations, so Emily needs to stay alert and handle any monsters he misses. On their way back to town, the pair follows a narrow, winding mountain road through the rain, carrying their bag of carrots. Along the way, they come across a man arguing with a woman. Since the road is too narrow to get past, Ryota asks them to move aside. But the man only wants to know who is going to retrieve the luggage he dropped into the ravine. Ryota volunteers, as long as someone has a rope. The woman immediately warns him not to do it. The bag has been down there for too long and could turn into a lost monster, especially since it contains drops from a particularly dangerous creature. The woman starts preparing a spell to burn the luggage, but the man stops her. There is an extremely expensive perfume inside that bag, and he refuses to lose it. He hired a huge number of adventurers to obtain that item and does not want to watch his investment turn to ashes. The woman does not care about his story, especially because he was the one who dropped the luggage after slipping in the rain. After telling her she is fired, the man tries to hit her with a powerful attack that destroys part of the rocky wall. The sorceress dodges, but laments that she was not able to prevent the worst from happening. The man begins transforming into something else. She explains that it is a monster called a Femini, which uses a human body as a host to protect itself. Ryota could not care less about the guy and fires several rounds at him. A cloud of smoke keeps the man from being pierced by the bullets, but he collapses and passes out while the Femini seems to die. The sorceress tells the strangers to take the man and run while she thinks of a way to fix the situation. If the luggage stays down there, more Feminis will appear. She considers going down and becoming a host herself to buy them time, while Ryota and Emily call an extermination squad. Emily asks what will happen to her, and the woman explains that she was hired as an escort for this job. That makes it her responsibility. Her words remind Ryota Sato of something from his old company. One day, while he was exhausted, he watched a manager chew out the coworker beside him and order him to do everything again, even if it meant staying awake for 5 straight days. Ryota wanted to help, but the man refused. He said it was his fault, and he would deal with it himself. Ryota could not do anything back then, but he promises himself he will do things differently now. With that in mind, he stops the woman from going down alone, loads his revolver with ice bullets, and fires repeatedly into the ravine. A vast layer of ice forms below, trapping the Feminis circling the luggage. Then Emily brings down a devastating hammer strike and finishes the creatures off. With a smile on her face, the adventurer who was about to go down alone thanks the stranger for saving her. To make things even better, once they return to town, they see that Emily Brown has leveled up significantly from landing the final blow on the Feminis. Out of the 40 levels she can reach, she has already made it to level 20, proving that those monsters were genuinely powerful. Overjoyed, Emily says that nothing but good things have happened since Ryota came into her life. Ryota answers that it is actually the other way around. Ever since he met Emily, he has never felt more blessed. The next day, the duo raises the bar even higher as they try their luck on Lulu's 4th floor. Emily runs into a different kind of monster and immediately yells that it's rare. Ryota pulls out his revolver, takes the creature down, and hands its drop to his teammate, a necklace that, according to what he heard from the system's voice, doubles the drop rate. Emily is clearly touched, thinking the gift is some kind of sign of affection. But Ryota only talks about how much more money she'll be able to make with it, so she can't hide her disappointment. Taking her frustration out on the enemies, Emily defeats several bats in a row and confirms that the drop rate has increased dramatically. Seeing a pile of bamboo shoots scattered across the floor finally brings a smile back to her face. When they get home, Ryota notices that Emily has a hard time cooking in such a tiny kitchen. That makes him consider moving somewhere else, since the money they are making now would easily allow them to afford a better place. Happy to hear that, Emily only asks him not to push himself too hard. She knows Ryota has no limits whenever he sets his mind on something, promising that he won't overdo it. Ryota Sato invites her to hunt more bamboo shoots tomorrow and get off work at a normal time for once. The following day, while he is trying to sell the bamboo shoots at the shop counter, an unfamiliar woman asks if he would be willing to give them to her. Confused by her audacity, Ryota ends up handing her one of the shoots. She tosses it into the air and slices it into perfect pieces, each one landing flawlessly on a plate covered in sauce. After tasting one, Ryota assumes from her expression that she hates it. But then the woman drops to her knees and admits that it is the first time she has ever eaten a raw bamboo shoot that's sweet and juicy. According to her, it tastes like a rare monster. Because of that, the mysterious woman begs Ryota to sell her every bamboo shoot he has. Not quite sure what to do, he agrees, since she has no idea how much she should pay. The woman places a crumpled bill in his hand and walks away, saying, "Farewell, fantastic bamboo shoot boy." When Ryota sees that she left him 20,000 pylos, he thinks it is way too much for what she bought. That is when Urza excitedly tells him that he has just met the incredible gourmet expert, Eric Macy. Any ingredient that earns her approval becomes extremely valuable in the culinary world. For that reason, Urza offers the adventurer an exclusive contract. Before long, everyone in Secro will be talking about Ryota's bamboo shoots. And when that happens, she wants to build a brand around their reputation. Ryota's bamboo shoots. A little confused, Ryota asks if all of that is really worth it. Urza raises her voice and guarantees that, on top of the shoot's regular price, she will pay him an additional bonus established in the contract. Since that is the case, Sato decides to trust his friend and leaves the whole matter in her hands. A day later, Ryota heads back to the first floor of Nihonium Dungeon, determined to raise his strength stat and reach rank S. Deep inside the cave, he spots a young girl fighting a skeleton and tells her to get out of the way as he draws his revolver. However, the girl gives an order to her teammates, who suddenly appear and restrain the monster. With the skeleton immobilized, she lands a blow that tears its head off. Curiously enough, the skull falls directly into the group's magic cart, leaving Ryota pretty intrigued. With the situation under control, one of the team members tells him not to get in their way because Princess Margaret is working. Margaret gives the unfamiliar adventurer a friendly wave, and Ryota comments on how amazing this world is if it even has princesses running around in dungeons. According to her subordinate, she is creating boxes of air. After all, defeated monsters sometimes do not drop anything, especially in Nihonium, where no creature drops items at all. Ryota had almost forgotten about that because his rank as drop rate lets him get blood from a stone. The man goes on to explain that recent research has found that some monsters drop air. Their plan is to package that air and sell it. But it is not just any air, it is air produced by Princess Margaret herself. Impressed by the boldness of these people, Ryota asks if that really is a magic cart. The man confirms it is. Without one, they would never be able to carry so many things at once, and they obviously cannot make the princess enter and leave the dungeon all day. Realizing just how useful a cart like that would be, Ryota laments that he cannot afford one. That brings up a serious conversation with Emily. They need to decide what should come first, a new house or a magic cart. Without hesitating, Emily says they should invest in the cart. It will let them make much more money and move somewhere better even sooner. Ryota admits that he had been thinking the same thing, but he was afraid of disappointing her after talking about finding a nicer home. Being incredibly understanding, Emily assures him that her life is already wonderful there with him. Moved by her maturity, Ryota says he plans to visit the cart shop tomorrow. Emily gets excited at the thought of seeing Olga, the shop owner's daughter, again the next morning. However, as soon as they arrive at the shop, they hear Olga crying outside. They rush in to find out what is wrong. Olga explains that her father went out to collect flowers and has not returned yet. Emily knows that the only place nearby where flowers drop is Arsenic Dungeon, so there is a good chance that Olga's father is there. Because of that, Ryota and Emily immediately race toward the dungeon. Inside, they come across several Dandaroks, stone-like plants that neither move nor attack. Ryota thinks they can simply run through the open path until they find Olga's father, but there are so many Dandaroks in the way that their only option is to defeat them. He fires at one of the monsters, but his bullet does absolutely no damage. Emily, on the other hand, gets the job done with the ridiculous weight of her hammer, smashing every monster in their way. Each one turns into a pile of yellow flowers. Some time later, the duo reaches the dungeon's 10th floor and finds Olga's father sleeping heavily on the ground. Ryota tries to wake the old man, but nothing works. Suddenly, Emily gives off that same terrifying aura she had when she fought the cockroaches. Olga has been crying because she is worried about her father, while he is shamelessly taking a nap inside a dungeon. With that said, Emily slams her hammer into the ground with so much force that the man wakes up in a panic. He wants to know why they interrupted such a good sleep, and that audacity only makes Emily angrier. She points out that Olga was left all alone and is desperate. And only then does the old man remember that he has a 5-year-old daughter. He argues that he came here to collect important materials for a new magic cart prototype. For that, he needs heavy rock and light rock. Heavy rock was easy to find, but light rock is much harder. They are rare little rocks that are lighter than air, so they float near the ceiling. The man points to one of the light rocks, and Ryota comes up with an idea. He puts Emily on his shoulders so she can hit it with her hammer. Once she climbs up, Ryota has a terrible time keeping his balance. Even with rankest strength, Emily's hammer feels like it weighs more than an elephant. Still, the brave adventurer manages to hold on as best he can until she delivers the finishing blow and destroys the tiny stone monster. A beautiful blue flower drops from it, exactly what the shop owner had been looking for all along. To show them what the item does, he takes the two friends outside Arsenic Dungeon and places the flower in the middle of an empty field so that a lost one can appear. Emily questions the idea. If another light rock appears, it will fly straight into the sky this time. Inside the dungeon, there was a ceiling. Out in the open, things are much more complicated. The shop owner admits that this is exactly what will happen if they fail to catch the monster in time. And sure enough, the flower transforms into a light rock and immediately flies upward. The old man runs after it, but fails to catch it. Ryota comes up with a last-second solution. He fires an ice bullet at the monster and freezes it. It may be lighter than air, but the ice makes it heavy enough to fall. That night, at Progress Shop, after working hard to finish his prototype, the shop owner introduces his newest magical invention to the customers, Orton's Magic Cart. Then, to everyone's surprise, Orton gives the cart to Ryota Sato. The moment he realizes the man is handing him the prototype just like that, Ryota immediately refuses because it is far too valuable. But the old man explains that the gift is not just because of today's help. It is because Ryota is a true hero of Sekiro. After all, Ryota saved everyone in the city a few days ago, and he deserves to be recognized for it. Olga asks her friend to take good care of it. Ryota promises that he will do his best and gratefully accepts the gift. The very next day, Emily and Ryota return to Tululu to test out a hunt with their upgraded cart. As expected, they are able to store far more items than before, which will make all of their future expeditions much easier. After another long day of hard work, once the cart reaches maximum capacity, Ryota says he will sell the items at Swallow's Gratitude while Emily heads home to make dinner. When he arrives at the shop, Ryota sees a shady-looking customer arguing with Urza over the value of the drops he brought in. The man believes his goods should be worth at least 10,000 pylos, while the merchant insists that 8,400 is the listed price and she will not pay him a single coin more. The man completely loses his temper and tries to attack her. Ryota fires an ice bullet at the arm he raises to hit the girl. The bald man stares at Ryota in disbelief, while Ryota Sato firmly says that Urza would never lie about the value of someone's merchandise. And now that he has the prototype cart, he can do more than just say it. He walks up to the counter, impressing everyone with Orton's new model of magic cart, and asks how much one of the green onions brought by the shady bald guy is worth. Urza answers that each one is worth 120 pylos. Ryota enters that amount into the cart's counter and explains that the model automatically detects the weight of its contents and calculates their total selling price. He throws the green onions into the cart and shows everyone that the final sum is exactly 8,400 pylos, the same price Urza had given him. The bald man accuses the kid of conspiring against him, but Ryota argues that there is no way he could have set any of this up. He just arrived and happened to walk into the argument. Even then, the man refuses to accept getting less money than he wanted. After using his monstrous strength to break free from the ice, he charges at Ryota with a punch, but Ryota stops the blow with one hand, leaving everyone around them speechless. Then he slaps the man so hard that he gets knocked out on the spot. While the people in the shop cheer for what he did, Urza looks strangely worried. During their coffee break, she talks to Ryota about how she had to be saved again. It makes her sad because she feels like she is always causing trouble for him. Every day, she works hard as a merchant to provide a safe environment for her customers. But sometimes things get out of control, and unexpected problems happen. Even though she understands that, she still cannot help feeling upset about it. Ryota tells her that there is nothing wrong with needing help every once in a while. Even he always needs Urza's help to sell his products, and he relies on her honesty to make good deals like the exclusive bamboo shoot contract she offered him. Taking advantage of what he just said, Urza replies, "I know the contract was about bamboo shoots, but there was another exclusive bamboo I really wanted." With that, she plants a kiss right on his lips. Ryota reacts as if he has just been violated somehow. Embarrassed by the grown man's cluelessness, Urza returns to work, completely red-faced, while the poor guy tries to process what just happened. Time passes, and Ryota Sato and Emily Brown continue working at full speed with their newest acquisition. With the magic cart supporting them, the duo finally earns enough money to move somewhere else, and that is exactly what they do. One day, while packing their things for the move, both of them feel a little sad because they have grown emotionally attached to their old home. For Sato, it was his first place to live in this unfamiliar world. For Emily, it was where she discovered how wonderful it feels to have somewhere to return to. Taking the 20,000 pylos Eric gave him out of his pocket, Ryota reflects on how he managed to earn the 20,000 pylos needed to rent this house after killing slimes for 3 days. With that in mind, he decides to keep renting the house so they can come back whenever they want. Even after moving into their new place, it may seem expensive, but Ryota says that he enters a dungeon every single day to make money and protect the things that matter to him. Sometime later, Ryota wakes up to find that Emily has already prepared breakfast. Out of nowhere, Eve appears at the table and compliments the carrot dish Emily made. Startled, Ryota asks when that pest got into the house. Eve simply replies, "Where there are carrots, there are rabbits." With a smile, Emily says there is enough food for everyone. Then the three of them sit down together and share the meal. Sometime later, Emily is busy developing new recipes in the kitchen, enjoying the peaceful life she never thought she would have. Meanwhile, Ryota Sato is taking down mummies with his revolver on Nihonium's first floor. After fighting skeletons and zombies, this is easily his toughest challenge yet, and it is no surprise that he has just run out of ammo. When he absorbs the mummy's seed, the adventurer gains 1 point of speed, but he does not get a second to rest. Another mummy attacks and gets close enough to make him worry. Even so, despite the monster's size, Ryota manages to create some distance and lands a kick. To his surprise, the blow tears the creature clean in half. Ryota sometimes forgets it, but his strength really is rank S. He will not always need a loaded revolver to solve his problems. After another exhausting expedition, Ryota is sitting at one of the tables and swallows gratitude to catch his breath. Suddenly, an unfamiliar young man sits across from him after calling him by his full name. Naturally, Ryota asks who this guy is. Before the stranger can answer, though, an adult woman and a younger girl hug him and ask if he is really the person Ni-kun had been looking for. Ryota stares at this absolute ladies' man in complete confusion and asks what the hell this playboy wants from him. The man known as Ni challenges Ryota to an arm wrestling match. He has heard that Ryota has been drawing a lot of attention because of his unusual strength. As the stranger gets into position, Ryota assumes he is talking about the time he slapped that muscular bald guy who tried to attack Urza. Either way, he is now facing a cocky guy surrounded by women, so he cannot afford to embarrass himself. Without hesitation, Ryota accepts the challenge and gets ready. The second the match begins, both competitors realize that the other is every bit as strong as he seemed. At first, neither of them can gain an inch. Their chairs shift under the pressure, but their arms do not move at all. A few seconds later, Ryota Sato finally overpowers the ladies' man and defeats him in front of everyone. And there are plenty of people watching. The crowd is stunned to see the mighty Neptune lose. His women look embarrassed, but Neptune himself takes it in stride and openly acknowledges Ryota's incredible strength. Hearing the crowd whisper Neptune's name, Ryota remembers Urza telling him about the Neptunes, the most powerful organization in Sekiro. With a smile on his face, the stranger asks for a rematch, but Sato refuses because he does not want to draw even more attention. At that point, Neptune drops the polite act. Seeing that this approach will not work, he suddenly throws a punch at Ryota. Ryota answers with a punch of his own, and their fists collide above the table for several seconds before Neptune is violently launched backward. Ryota wonders if this guy has rocks for brains, but Neptune still has the same wide grin on his face as he praises his opponent's power. After all that spectacle, he says that he likes Ryota and invites him to join his family. The whispers around them grow even louder. The leader of the Neptune family himself is personally trying to recruit Ryota. When Ryota gets home that night, Emily is surprised to hear that he turned the offer down. He has no interest in joining any group. He is happy living a quiet life with his companion. Emily admits that she is glad he made that choice. Then Eve, who did not even seem to be in the room until then, suddenly appears just to say that this low-level guy really has some nerve. Even though Ryota refused, Emily points out that being invited was still a huge accomplishment. She believes it happened because he has helped so many people ever since arriving in this world. In Brown's eyes, Ryota Sato is a hero. When the sun rises again, the young adventurer from another world returns to the depths of Nihonium. With every step, he remembers Emily calling him a hero. Truth be told, the compliment has made him feel a little proud of himself. Inside the dungeon, he runs into Princess Margaret's subordinate again. The man is standing in front of several boxes containing the princess's newest product, the Pandora box. It automatically absorbs dropped items and can even show the face of the person who dropped them. The man explains that some people doubted the heir had really been created by the princess, so they made these boxes to prove once and for all that they were telling the truth. Since Ryota is an adventurer, he gives him several boxes for free, one to keep and the rest to hand out to his friends as promotion. For a moment, Ryota feels a little uncomfortable with how forcefully the man pushes the boxes on him. However, hours later, after leaving the dungeon, he realizes that he can finally bring seeds outside the dungeon, and that is exactly what he does. Without wasting any time, Ryota leaves a box full of seeds at a distance so they can turn into lost monsters. Just as expected, the box gives rise to several skeletons, proving why Ryota earned the nickname Trigger Finger. After mowing down the monsters with his revolver, he gets a pile of freezing bullets. But then he notices something strange and decides to head back inside the dungeon with the other boxes tucked under his arms. Later, Emily arrives at Nihonium with the magic cart and finds her partner standing at the entrance, aiming his revolver at a white box. She asks whether he hit his head on a rock, only for the box to transform into a mummy and a zombie. After defeating the zombie with his gun and punching the mummy to death, Ryota celebrates the success of his plan. The zombie drops a fire bullet, while the mummy drops another equally special type of ammunition. Excited by this strategy, he rushes to repeat the process and fill his pockets with ammo. But just as he is about to open another box and take out the seeds, he suddenly feels a powerful chill run down his spine. Emily had forgotten because she got distracted, but now she remembers that she came to tell him something important. A monostorm is approaching. When Sato arrives at Swallow's Gratitude after his expedition, Urza asks why Emily is not with him. Stammering a little, Sato explains that she said she needed to buy something, so they split up for the day. without understanding the situation. The waitress tells him that a monostorm is on the way. Ryota admits Emily mentioned it, but since she could not properly explain what it was, he asks Urza to tell him more. Urza explains that monostorms are rare natural phenomena during which people cannot use magic. Depending on the size and intensity of the storm, magic can become unusable, not only throughout the city but even inside dungeons. That is exactly what is happening now. This monostorm will be especially powerful, so it is effectively a day off for magic users. Anything dropped in dungeons that is meant for mages also becomes scarce, affecting what people can buy. Suddenly, an adventurer bursts through the doors of Swallow's Gratitude, desperately begging everyone for help. His partner, Rosa, is trapped inside Silicon. Urza becomes worried about the man, Reyes, and explains to Ryota that Silicon is one of the dungeons meant for mages. Ryota thought mages were taking the day off. So Urza tells him that Reyes and Rosa only just arrived in town and apparently did not know about the storm. Ryota is troubled by the fact that no one is offering to help the desperate man. Then Neptune appears out of nowhere and comments that it truly is a tragic situation. Startled, Sato asks what he is doing there. Neptune says he came to see whether Ryota had changed his mind. Since Ryota still refuses to join his family, Neptune says it is unfortunate that the mage lost his friend inside Silicon. The monsters there are such a serious threat that even he would not dare enter. Urza explains that the creatures in that dungeon are barely affected by attacks that are not magical. Neptune expresses his sympathy again, but makes it clear that he will not risk his life for a stranger. Hearing that, and driven by the title of hero Emily Brown gave him, Ryota steps forward and offers to help the mage who is crying helplessly on the floor of Swallow's Gratitude. A few hours later, Ryota is on Silicon's first floor. His goal is to reach the third floor, where Reyes said Rosa should be. When he encounters a giant insect, Ryota fires a flame bullet and defeats it. The monster drops a head of lettuce. He quickly shoots the item with a freezing bullet to prevent it from becoming a lost monster. Seeing that his plan works, Ryota becomes confident. Even in the middle of a monostorm, he can still use his special ammunition. With that in mind, he continues toward the third floor, taking down every monster in his path. Meanwhile, Emily arrives at Swallow's Gratitude and learns that Ryota has thrown himself into another last-minute adventure. After a difficult journey, Ryota reaches the third floor. A flying insect appears immediately, so he kills it with a flame bullet and freezes its drop as usual. After running through much of the floor, he finally finds a badly injured woman lying on the dungeon floor. He assumes she is Rosa. Another flying insect appears, but when he pulls the trigger, Ryota discovers that he has run out of special ammo. At the same time, Emily Brown and Eve Callisleader hurry towards Silicon Dungeon. Eve says they cannot afford to lose the low-levels carrots, but Emily explains that a big reason she cares for Ryota is because he reminds her of her mother. In an old memory, Emily recalls the day her mother took her into a dungeon. That day, her mother defeated several monsters that dropped bottles of wine and even rescued a group of exhausted, injured adventurers. According to Emily, whenever her mother saw someone who needed help, she would help them. She would scold them for not being more careful, then laugh and have fun with them afterward. She was the very definition of a strong and kind woman. Emily believed her mother would live forever, but one day, something happened. In that same dungeon, an adventurer came running toward them and told Emily's mother to escape. A lost dragon was nearby. Despite the beast's terrifying roars, the woman told her daughter not to worry. She told Emily to escape with the others while she dealt with the situation. After an intense battle, Emily's mother managed to defeat the dragon. But when Emily found her lying severely injured on the dungeon floor, the only thing the woman wanted to know was whether everyone else had escaped. Emily said everyone was safe, everyone except her mother. The child immediately began to cry. Her mother wiped the tears from her eyes and told her that there would be time to be sad later. Using what little strength she had left, she asked Emily to carry her on her back to the others. If she stayed behind alone, a lost monster could appear from her belongings. Struggling to speak, the brave adventurer told her daughter to always be careful if she ever entered a dungeon again, not only for herself, but especially for others. Remembering those words, Emily emphasizes that her mother cared about people until the very end. She was a true hero. As Emily carried her, the adventuress slowly lost her strength. Eventually, she could no longer even hold onto Emily's back. To Emily, Ryota is exactly like her mother. He is always trying his hardest to help others, and now it is her turn to help him. Back in Silicon, Ryota Sato runs at full speed with Rosa on his back, while several flying insects chase after him. For a moment, he tries shooting them with regular ammo, but it does not work at all. Then, out of nowhere, he sees Emily and Eve rushing toward him. They are carrying one of Princess Margaret's boxes, and several zombies are chasing them. Emily promises to take care of Rosa, while Ryota needs to kill the lost monsters to obtain more special ammunition. Eve and Emily hold the insects back as best they can while Sato kills the zombies, earning the bullets he needs to finally destroy Silicon's powerful magical insects. Some time passes. After waiting anxiously outside the dungeon, Reyes sees the three of them emerge from the cave with Rosa, desperate over his partner's wounds. Reyes cannot use healing magic because of the Monostorm. But while people may say weapons only bring violence, Ryota completely shatters that idea by firing a healing bullet into the girl. That is right, the other bullet he discovered alongside the fire bullet was a healing bullet. He did not have time to use it inside the dungeon because an insect showed up at the last second. But now everything is finally under control. After saving the day once again, Ryota Sato smiles as he watches Reyes carry Rosa on his back after they return to the city. When Emily sees him smiling, she can see her own mother in him. Ryota also praises his companion for her great idea. Emily says she only copied what he did by luring monsters outside the dungeon. To celebrate, Ryota suggests that they get something to eat before heading home, but Emily insists on going home and cooking dinner herself. Ryota assumes she must be exhausted, yet the girl seems energized by this special moment in her life. With every step she takes, Emily Brown feels as though her mother is watching over her. On another ordinary day, Ryota brings a watermelon to Swallow's gratitude, a new item he wants Urza to assess. Impressed by the grown man's massive watermelon, Urza asks for a moment so she can check something in the back. But then Eric Macy shows up with his usual swagger, saying there's no need for that, she can evaluate it right here and now. The moment she takes a bite and her eyes widen, the agronomist praises its refreshing texture and soul-satisfying sweetness, saying it feels like bathing in the sunlight at the beach. Suddenly, the customers around them get jealous because this woman always gets to try Ryota's goods for free. So they literally rush his magic cart so they won't be left craving any. Seeing the public's reaction, Urza asks Ryota to sign an exclusive contract for his watermelons as well. Naturally, the guy celebrates, since he has now secured an income source beyond bamboo shoots. By the way, since Ryota has been getting those watermelons from the 5th floor of Tululu, Urza advises him to obtain a license allowing him to explore the dungeon's 6th floor. Considering that the danger rises sharply every 5 floors, getting that permit is important. Every city has its own laws, and in Sekiro, a license is required for every 5 floors. If an adventurer tries to sell items dropped from that floor onward without permission, it is illegal for any merchant to buy them. Without wasting any time, Ryota Sato heads to a mansion that, oddly enough, is decorated with fruits and vegetables everywhere. He enters and finds a middle-aged man smoking a cigar, so he asks if this is where he can get a license. The man asks what the young adventurer's accomplishments are, and Ryota immediately remembers what Urza told him. Whenever someone asks, he should say that he regularly brings watermelons from Tululu's 5th floor. Upon hearing that, the man reluctantly gets out of his chair, picks up a melon, and tells them to follow him. He leads the two youngsters into a spacious room, places the melon on display, and explains that this fruit was dropped on Tululu's 6th floor. It is about to become a lost, and if Ryota defeats it, he will pass. But before anything else, Ryota should understand that what he is about to see is very different from what he has faced so far. Even so, Ryota loves a good challenge, so he does not back down. The three humans hide and wait until the melon turns into a steel slime. Emily is worried, since the creature's armor can withstand even bladed weapons. On the other hand, Ryota is full of confidence. He wants to find out whether that ball can withstand the punch of an adventurer with Rankus strength. So, he throws a full-force punch right at the monster's face. The slime remains completely intact, while Ryota's hand starts throbbing in pain. Still, it is not a problem, because Ryota Sato says he has a plan. He loads a fire bullet and an ice bullet into the chambers of his revolver, then fires the first shot to set the slime ablaze. Right after that, the cold bullet freezes the creature solid. Emily has no idea how that happened, while Ryota tells her to watch the little show he is about to put on. He gives the ice-covered slime a light tap, and both the shell of ice and the slime itself shatter into pieces. Since the girl is still completely confused, he explains that it is the principle of thermal shock. After hitting metal with an extremely hot round, freezing it immediately makes the material brittle. Even though the examiner looked annoyed throughout the entire test, he is incredibly impressed by Ryota's performance and grants him the license to access to Lulu's 6th floor. The old man says he has worked there for 10 years, but no one has impressed him more than Ryota. Curiously, Emily looks at her friend's face to see how he reacts to such a huge compliment, but Ryota is already lost in thought, focused on future strategies to become even stronger. Suddenly, the guy grabs Emily by the shoulders and asks for her help with something important. A few days later, the two head to an isolated, dry area beneath a blazing sun. As she hides behind a rock with him, Emily admits that she was surprised when Ryota said he needed 1.5 million pylos because he wanted a tuna. Ryota explains that he really wants to try something, but first he needs to turn the tuna into a lost. Sure enough, the fish transforms into one of those gigantic gorillas that attacked Sekiro. Emily panics, but her teammate takes responsibility and assures her that they are leaving with a positive result. First, Sato fires ice bullets all over the gorilla's body to immobilize it, leaving only its head exposed. Then, he climbs the frozen layers until he reaches the gorilla's forehead. At that point, you can probably imagine how this story ends. After asserting dominance over the ape with some truly insane alpha energy, Ryota Sato confirms his suspicion with a smile. These monkeys really do drop weapons. An identical revolver falls to the ground, which will make the adventurer's life much easier, since he can now switch between ammunition combinations far more easily. Seeing him with a weapon in each hand, Emily can only ask her buddy Yoda not to go down the dark side. After accidentally pointing both guns at the girl, Ryota promises that he will only do good deeds for the rest of his life. A few days later, Ryota returns to Swallow's gratitude and asks why Urza looks so down. She explains that a strike is taking place. The Adalbert group has occupied Silicon's 6th floor, the only place that drops rice, and they are saying that if Sekiro does not raise the purchase price of rice, they will stop selling it to the city. The moment Ryota hears about the situation, he is ready to get involved in yet another mess. Naturally, he heads to the Silicon Dungeon to try talking things out with a representative of the strike. To his displeasure, Sato runs into Neptune along the way. Neptune explains that he came in response to a call to deal with the Adalberts. They have pulled this kind of strike many times before, and the people of the city have finally run out of patience. Ryota asks if this is the part where the Neptunes teach the Adalberts a lesson. But Neptune says that is where the young man is wrong. They are not going to teach them a lesson, they are going to wipe them out completely. Breaking out in a cold sweat, Ryota asks for a chance to settle things another way first. Sometime later, he reaches the dungeon's 6th floor and finds 3 Adalbert members standing guard. Ryota draws both revolvers, prompting the trio to call the rest of their group in order to intimidate the intruder. However, without caring in the slightest and without saying a single word, Ryota Sato fires 2 bullets that put the entire group to sleep. Neptune suddenly appears behind the gunslinger and asks what happened. After getting startled, Ryota explains that he used healing bullets. Their normal purpose is only to restore injuries, but when 2 are used at once, they gain a sedative effect that knocks the target out. This is a strategy Sato can only use now that he has acquired his 2nd revolver, opening up countless new possibilities. After spending several days training in dungeons and testing different options, the adventurer discovered new techniques that are proving very useful. For example, he first tried firing an ice bullet and a fire bullet at the same time. He named the result the Eliminator Bullet, whatever that is supposed to mean. Emily encouraged him to keep trying new combinations, and that is exactly what he did. There is no doubt that obtaining a 2nd weapon took the adventurer to a whole new level. Done with the small talk, Ryota takes advantage of Neptune being there and asks him to help carry all these grown men who are passed out on the dungeon floor. Who knows how much time later, every Adalbert member is tied up outside Silicon. In the middle of all this, an unfamiliar man invites Ryota Sato to have some tea. During this unexpected meeting, the man introduces himself as Clint Gray and asks for Ryota's support in a battle over a new dungeon against the neighboring city of Hetero. According to him, every dungeon east of Sekiro drops meat, and Hetero is a livestock city. Then, right on the border between the 2 cities, a new dungeon appeared that drops 50% meat and 50% vegetables. If it mainly dropped vegetables, Sekiro could claim the dungeon. But that is not the case. Ryota finds it strange that these people decide ownership based on what a dungeon drops. So he innocently asks whether the dungeon really needs an owner at all. Extremely aggressive and irritated, Clint explains that every time dropped items are sold, taxes are collected, and ownership of a dungeon can drastically change a city's economy. Realizing that he completely lost his temper, the man apologizes and begins chewing around 8 sugar cubes at once like a complete maniac. Ryota is alarmed by this guy's complete lack of fear of diabetes, while Clint explains that the two cities decided to determine ownership of the dungeon based on who obtains the most rare drops. That is why he thought of asking Ryota Sato for help. Ryota is known for his strength, his ability to solve problems, and especially his excellent drop rates. Of course, Clint knows Ryota will not work for free. The boy will be rewarded even if they lose, and if they win, all of his drops will be completely tax-exempt. As he leaves the meeting and walks through the streets of Sekiro, Ryota feels great about being recognized for his work and knowing that people need him. Speaking of which, if he wants to live up to those expectations, he needs to get more special bullets and prepare the supplies and equipment needed for the expedition. This reminds him of the business trips he used to take, when he would push himself to the point of exhaustion. But now, he has Emily. As soon as he thinks of Emily, the guy chooses to run instead of walk. When he gets home, he tells his friend that he is heading to the new dungeon. Selen, the girl, thinks it is incredible, since this is the kind of job only major groups like the Neptunes usually take on. Taking the opportunity, Emily promises that she will stay home and take care of everything while he is gone. But Ryota wants her to come with him. Even though Emily argues that she would not be useful in a situation like this, he insists and eventually convinces her to join him on this journey. Out of nowhere, Eve appears demanding low-level carrots, so Ryota promises that he will get some before leaving for the trip. In the next scene, back in that desert-like area with his magic cart, Ryota complains that there is nothing around. Emily Brown explains that the only things that do not turn into lost are air, water, and soil. Outside places with lots of people, such as cities and dungeons, everything else is like this. While Ryota keeps complaining about the lack of opportunities, the girl uses a rock to draw a little figure in the dirt. She names it Mr. Bean Sprout, a source of energy meant to motivate future adventurers who pass through there. If everything goes well, Mr. Bean Sprout will bring them good luck. Since nothing else is happening, Ryota goes along with it and draws his own bean sprout, somehow making it look worse than something a 6-year-old would draw. Finally, the two draw their little figures holding hands and wish strength to whoever passes by that place. That night, Ryota Sato is amazed by the size of the tent Emily had been carrying inside her backpack. He says that women's bags can hold more things than anyone could ever imagine. But this is just ridiculous, and he is right. Because while Ryota is collecting water from the river and wondering if he gathered enough carrots to avoid awakening Eve's wrath, Emily is inside the tent furnishing it as if it were basically a normal house. Even more confused, Ryota asks how on earth she managed to bring all of that. Completely innocently, she says she put it in her backpack, then changes the subject to show him the special dessert she prepared for this special occasion, their first trip together. After leaving her friend to eat his pudding, the girl says she is going to burn the trash so it will not turn into lost. Ryota is surprised once again, because he had no idea that even trash could become lost in this world. Worse still, Emily explains that the ones created from waste are even worse, turning into monsters far more dangerous than usual. Even with that danger in mind, Ryota gets the idea to defeat those lost and see whether they drop something different. So, the two isolate the garbage for a while until the transformation occurs. In this case, a massive Frankenstein-like monster simply appears in front of them. Emily attacks first with her hammer, but the monster easily blocks her strike with its bare hand. Since that is how it is going to be, Ryota fires a flame bullet at the monster while drawing his other revolver to shoot a combination of bullets. When both attacks hit the Frankenstein, it is engulfed by a powerful curtain of flames and finally dies. At dawn, the duo leaves behind a carrot to transform into a lost. A slime appears and dodges one of Ryota's green bullets. However, the bullet curves around and chases the slime down, hitting it directly. Emily wants to know what she just witnessed, so her partner explains that the green bullet is homing. After their long trip, the two arrive at Selen, the new dungeon that appeared between Sekiro and Hetero. The place is full of people from both cities, but what catches their attention most is the massive pile of garbage sitting there. Sure, there are plenty of people around, but there is still the risk of it transforming into extremely dangerous lost. Just then, a woman walks up to the pile and uses fire magic, Inferno, to incinerate the waste. Only seconds after the first pile turns to ash, people begin forming another one by dumping even more trash in the area. Noticing the dark circles under the poor woman's eyes, Ryota imagines that her ability to burn the garbage is nowhere near enough to keep up with how quickly it piles up. Naturally, he can relate to that. He used to be the guy doing 100 hours of overtime every month. For that reason, he invites Emily to check on the woman. The two try to convince her to rest for a while, but she flatly refuses to take a break and keeps incinerating trash like a machine. The price of that relentless insistence soon catches up with her, and the poor woman faints backward. Luckily, she does not hit the ground, because the hero of the day is standing right there to catch her. Still trembling from exhaustion, the girl suddenly wakes up and says she's fine. Ryota uses the fact that she passed out to argue that she absolutely needs a break. But the poor woman just staggers over to the next pile of trash. Saddened by the situation, Ryota says he has seen plenty of people get crushed by work until they lose the will to live, and some even take their own lives. Maybe it is selfish of him, but he does not want to see someone else get swallowed up by overwork. So, the boy fires 2 healing bullets at her, triggering their calming effect and putting her to sleep. Some time later, she wakes up in a bed inside Ryota and Emily's tent, the moment she realizes the sun is almost setting and she has not finished her job. The poor woman frantically runs back to the dump only to get an unpleasant surprise. As soon as she arrives, several bags of waste transform into lost monsters. Without wasting a second, Ryota Sato shows up and starts firing flaming bullets at the Frankensteins. After taking down every enemy and happily collecting the new homing bullets they dropped, Emily apologizes for the wait and tells the people wanting to throw away their trash to form a line. When she notices that the girl from the dump has returned, Emily says she should sleep a little longer, but Ryota figures she must be starving. Because of that, they take their guest into the tent and serve her a massive feast. As for the trash, she does not need to worry about it, since the two of them set up their tent right next to the dump. I can only imagine the wonderful smell of urine-soaked cigarette butts inside that tent. Delicious. With a smile on her face, Emily tells their guests to eat before the food gets cold. The woman takes a sip of the soup, and a tear rolls down her face because it tastes so good. Emily says that she cries over food just like Ryota does, and when she turns toward him, the guy is deeply moved as well. Honestly, the two of them are pretty similar when it comes to working themselves to death too. Putting that aside, Emily asks the girl for her name. She says her name is Celeste. After talking for a while, Ryota and Emily learn that dungeon drops will remain tax-free until it is decided which country gets ownership of the dungeon, which is why the place is packed with adventurers. That is also why the amount of trash has increased so much, since one person clearly cannot handle all that garbage alone. Emily and Ryota offer to help Celeste whenever they have free time. And speaking of work, Celeste is so exhausted that she simply falls asleep in the middle of the conversation. After getting some rest, the mage becomes much more powerful and can incinerate the trash with absurd precision. According to Emily, Celeste's face even has more color now that she has rested, which makes her look even prettier. Ryota agrees. Once the work is done, Celeste thanks her friends for helping her so much, since she never would have been able to finish the job if resting had not restored so much of her mana. Emily makes it clear that the mage can sleep in their tent until the job is over. Celeste worries that she would be taking advantage of their kindness, but Ryota says this is Emily's unique ability, so it does not cause them any trouble at all. Feeling extremely grateful, Celeste decides to spend some time with them. Ryota says he is going to stop by Sekiro's headquarters, and Emily will walk with him for part of the way. They will be back by lunchtime, so Celeste can return to the tent if she wants. As they walk through a lively open-air market, Ryota and Emily realize that the area has practically turned into a small town right outside the dungeon. At one of the stalls, Emily becomes very interested in the jewelry. Ryota asks how business is going, and the seller says his products have been selling surprisingly well. Many of the men who come to work in the dungeon buy jewelry as gifts for their wives. Ryota notices a ring worth 1 million pylos, the most expensive item in the shop. Emily says she loves rings, but they are usually too expensive for her to buy. After all, a ring is something special. Later, Ryota Sato meets Duke. the man leading Sekiro's adventurers in the Sullen dungeon. After doing some research, Duke discovered that the dungeon has 10 floors. The odd-numbered ones drop vegetables, while the even-numbered ones drop meat. Sekiro and Hetero agreed on a time limit to see which country could obtain the most rare drops. The moment Ryota hears that, he gets up, ready to get to work. However, Duke explains that he will not need to kill the monsters himself. The creatures will be restrained, and Ryota only needs to land the finishing blow so that his drop rate can do its thing. Honestly, Ryota is happy to hear it. His entire life, nothing has ever come easy for him. But now these people have built an entire strategy around him. It is like Argentina structuring its entire game plan around making Messi shine. In other words, the kid is basically Sekiro's GOAT adventurer because of his ridiculously high drop rate. Just then, an adventurer arrives to report that a rare monster has been restrained on the first floor. Duke and Ryota immediately head there. Since Sekiro's representatives are the ones controlling the creature, the agreement between the two nations says they have the right to kill it and keep the drop. Ryota notices some shady-looking people watching the situation, and Duke explains that they are envoys from Hetero. The older man is Harvard, the head of his country's dungeon association. The red-haired kid is an adventurer named Eugene, famous for both his combat ability and his rank F drop rate for plants. Basically, the brat is there to sabotage Sekiro's plans. His mission is to kill rare monsters on vegetable floors and make sure they drop nothing, hurting the opposing nation. Since the monster is in Sekiro's custody, Ryota draws his gun to kill it. But after getting shot, the creature regenerates its body and returns to normal. Harvard knows it can only die if its core is destroyed. Hitting any other part of its body only makes it stronger. Eugene, on the other hand, knows exactly where the core is and stays alert for an opportunity. Now stronger, the monster breaks free from Sekiro's adventurers. That means Hetero's representatives are allowed to try their luck. Harvard tells Eugene to handle it, so the boy chases after the monster and is about to hit its core. But at the last possible moment, Ryota fires a homing bullet into the air. It comes down and hits the target's weak point perfectly, destroying it. Furious, Eugene asks if Ryota can see the core too. Ryota simply replies, "Sort of." Duke praises him for getting a soybean sprout, a rare item that puts Sekiro in the lead, while Harvard leaves empty-handed. On the way out of the dungeon, the expedition leader gives Sato a hefty reward and allows him to sell the drop he earned. The payment motivates Ryota, and he starts imagining himself swimming in money if he keeps doing a good job. When he gets home, Celeste is sleeping like a rock. Ryota tells Emily about the scummy Hetero adventurer who was sent there solely to ruin Sekiro's drops. Then he gives his best friend a very special present, the ring she had been eyeing at the market earlier. Since Emily said rings are special, Ryota thought it was only right to give one to someone so special to him. The girl is shocked because the item is so expensive. But Ryota explains that he made a lot of money on Selen's first floor, and also earned a bonus that day. Afterward, they check the status board and see that the ring gives Emily a +1 bonus to all her stats. Sato explains that there was another identical ring in the shop, and he was extremely curious to see what kind of lost monster would come from a 1 million Pylo ring. Since making money in Selen has become easy, he decided to test it. A powerful and rather unusual creature appears, and it drops an identical ring, except this one is enhanced with stat bonuses. Ryota invites Emily to test the item, so they head to Selen's second floor. Right away, they run into an ant. Emily charges at it with her hammer, and after 2 solid blows, it drops a chicken breast. Ryota does not understand why she is so happy, so Emily explains that she has always wanted to get a meat drop, even if it was just once. Her drop rate for animals was rank F, and even though that is only 1 rank below E, the difference is massive. People with rank F drop rates are called Final F, and some dungeons will not even let them enter. Suddenly, the floor's rare monster attacks several Hetero adventurers nearby. They tell someone to call Harvard, but the powerful creature is such an immediate threat that their leader may not arrive in time. The giant tree turns toward Emily and slams her, taking away half of her HP. Furious, Ryota points his guns at the creature. Harvard finally arrives and encourages the boy from Sekiro to fire, because he knows Ryota's drop rate is excellent. If the bearded ant drops an item, the competition between the two countries will be tied. Ryota holsters his guns, but Harvard does not care. As long as the monster dies on this floor, it does not matter who kills it. With that said, Harvard orders a huge man to finish off the bearded ant. Just by looking at the guy, Ryota can tell that his drop rate is good. The boy freezes, unsure what to do, until Emily throws her ring to him and runs after the monster. Ryota instantly understands the plan. He fires 3 freezing bullets at the ant, and Emily lands the finishing blow, killing it without triggering a drop. When Hetero's envoys leave frustrated once again, Ryota praises his partner for being clever enough to remove the ring and nerf her drop rate. Later, Duke thanks Ryota for his excellent work, but Ryota makes sure to point out that his partner, Emily Brown, did most of the work. Still, the leader brings terrible news. Hetero is fully committing to this game and is bringing enough adventurers to flood the Selen dungeon. They will have 3 times more adventurers than Sekiro, and their plan is to fill the vegetable floors with rank F drop-rate adventurers, completely screwing Sekiro over in the competition. Given the alarming situation, Duke believes their only choice is to do the same thing to Hetero. However, Ryota decides to settle this once and for all that very day. He says that if Sekiro can secure rare drops on floors 3, 5, 7, and 9, their chances of winning will become extremely high. For that to happen, Duke needs to raise the reward for rare monsters to 10 million. Duke thinks that is outrageous, because if the monsters do not drop anything, the losses will be enormous. But Ryota reminds him that he will be there to land the finishing blows, and his chance of getting a drop is 100%. Even so, if a drop somehow does not appear, Ryota will personally pay the reward out of his own pocket. The leader accepts the offer, and the two get to work immediately. On Selen's 3rd floor, Ryota Sato faces the evil butterfly, the rare form of the assassin butterfly, and gets Brussels sprouts as a drop. On the 5th floor, the rare form of the Paragurso is the Panda Paragurso. Ryota defeats it as well, and it drops a saltwort. On the 7th floor, Ryota defeats the Mad Golem, the rare form of the Stone Golem. It drops a turnip sprout when it dies. Now Ryota and Duke are on the 9th floor, facing their toughest challenge yet, a gigantic serpent with multiple heads. According to Duke, one of its heads is its weak point, but whenever a head regenerates, the weak point changes. In that case, Ryota fires several homing bullets to hit every head at once, defeating the enemy and getting Enoki mushrooms as a drop. Every rare drop so far has been pretty underwhelming, and Ryota expected something better from the 2nd to last floor. But apparently the entire dungeon just has bad loot. Duke celebrates because victory is practically guaranteed now and promises to give Ryota Sato all the credit for the achievement. After Duke leaves with the others, Ryota remembers how every idea he had at his old company was rejected. Yet today, he managed to convince the expedition leader to invest 40 million from the budget into Sato's strategy. Back on the 1st floor, Ryota reflects that, regardless of the competition, he made a huge purchase and wants to earn more money. Suddenly, a group of hetero adventurers led by Eugene surrounds Sekiro's adventurer. Eugene says Ryota Sato has gone too far, since he is the main reason Hetero's envoys lost their chance at the massive rewards. Because of that, Eugene orders a mage to trap Sato in a magic circle. According to him, it has the same effect as a mana storm, preventing the target from using projectiles. The hetero adventurer says they will not kill Ryota Sato, but promises they will not stop beating him until he is unable to work for a long time. With that, Hetero's adventurers attack. However, Ryota deals with them effortlessly. Even without his guns, he still has rank as strength. After beating everyone down, he points one revolver at the enemy mage and another at Eugene. Eugene insists Ryota cannot shoot because of the magic circle, so Ryota fires right beside his head and says that he has used his guns during a mana storm before. The mage drops the magic circle and takes several steps back, while Ryota fires healing bullets at the opposing adventurers, making them wake up completely healed. After that, Ryota says he understands how the hetero adventurers feel and that they can attack him as many times as they want. Whenever someone gets hurt, Sato will heal them, but he will not lose this fight because someone is waiting for him to return safely. Eugene admits that he envies Ryota for having someone like that. Sato replies that he did not always have that person either, so maybe Eugene can find someone too. When he returns to the tent and is welcomed by Emily and Celeste, Ryota looks at the two of them and makes a point of saying that he is back home. The girls are confused, but that was exactly the point. Ryota wanted to make that happy fact sink into his mind. Emily had prepared a proper feast to welcome their new friend, and she had the two of them wait at the table while she went to grab a surprise. Celeste compliments Ryota on the great job he did, and while he appreciates it, He points out that it still hasn't been decided whether Selen will belong to Sekro. There is still work to do, and only after everything is settled will they be able to return to Sekro. Emily soon comes back with a gorgeous strawberry cake, leaving Celeste completely baffled. How the hell did she bake something like that? When Emily explains that she made it over a campfire, the idea simply does not compute for the mage. Ryota tries to change the subject, but even he is left speechless when Emily casually reveals that she also has ice cream. The next morning, Celeste casts an incredibly powerful fire spell just to burn a small pile of trash, then immediately passes out. The only reason she doesn't hit the ground face first is because Ryota is nearby and catches her in time. After gently laying her down, he fires a healing bullet at her. When the sorceress regains consciousness, she notices his face is way too close to hers and shoves the poor guy away. Panicking, she realizes that her underwear is wet and has no idea why, so she starts slapping herself in the face like she has completely lost it. After that entire spectacle, she acts as if nothing happened and asks whether Ryota came over because he needed something. Confused, he explains that there was only a little trash to burn, but she decided to use an absurdly powerful spell that was clearly unnecessary. Celeste then reveals that this is the only spell she can use, level 3 Inferno. She cannot even cast the first 2 levels of the exact same spell. At that moment, 2 adventurers show up with another load of trash to burn. Celeste gets ready to handle it, but Ryota fires a flaming bullet and takes care of the problem himself. Since he has no work to do at the moment, he figures he can help his friend for a while. A few hours later, Ryota finds himself standing in front of a mountain of garbage, and he is already sick of this crap. It feels like the more trash they burn, the more somehow appears. Celeste explains that things are this bad today because the dungeon master has shown up a powerful and dangerous monster that appears from time to time. Because of it, nobody can enter the dungeon for now, so everyone starts stress eating, which naturally creates even more trash. Just explaining all of this is enough to make Celeste slump from exhaustion. Emily gets worried, but assures them that an extermination party should be assembled soon to deal with the situation. Ryota tells Celeste to get some rest while he handles the rest of the work. She refuses to dump everything on him, but he insists. The poor girl is exhausted again and can barely stay on her feet. With that settled, Emily literally pushes Celeste into the tent to lie down, while Ryota rolls up his sleeves and gets to work. The next day, though, another mountain of garbage has already formed, leaving everyone frustrated all over again. Emily tries to lift their spirits by saying that the extermination party must have been organized by now, and with that in mind, Ryota decides to go check. As he leaves, Celeste wonders why that guy is always so kind to her. Emily explains that Ryota is just like that, he simply cannot ignore someone who is in trouble. According to her, he is the same way back in Sekro. Hearing the name of the city reminds Celeste that Ryota had said he could only return to Sekro once he finished his work. When Ryota reaches headquarters, he runs into Neptune and his 2 companions. Duke explains that they will need Ryota's help to defeat the dungeon master. Ryota immediately asks him to get this whole thing sorted out as quickly as possible, since one of his friends is suffering because of the mess. Neptune would love to take care of it right away, but unfortunately, there is a catch. According to Duke, the agreement with Hetero states that whenever the dungeon master appears, both cities must join forces to exterminate it. The problem is that Hetero is making absolutely no effort to gather its troops. Ryota asks why, and the blue-haired woman explains that the city actually benefits from the situation. If the dungeon master remains there long enough, the dungeon's ecosystem can change, which also changes its drops. According to Duke, that could wipe out Sekro's near victory and send them right back to square one. Since that is the case, Ryota offers to defeat the dungeon master by acting on his own, technically getting around the whole working together requirement. But the pink-haired girl explains that there is another rule. Only a party made up of at least 3 rank A adventurers can enter the dungeon. Ryota does not understand why such a rule even exists, so Duke bluntly tells him that the dungeon master is powerful enough to require it. Ryota then invites Neptune to form a party with him, but Neptune explains that he came with his companions as part of an extermination party hired by Sekro. Because of that, he cannot act independently. With no other choice, Ryota Sato goes around looking for adventurers willing to join his team. But just as Neptune warned him, it is incredibly difficult. Most adventurers came to take advantage of the tax exemption and make money. Risking their lives against a dungeon master would be a terrible deal. When Ryota returns to his tent with his head down, he finds Emily Brown fully prepared to face the dungeon master. She knew her friend would end up doing this. Ryota thanks her for the thought, but points out that they still need one more person. That is when Celeste volunteers. Surprised, Ryota asks about the trash, and she explains that she found someone to help. He becomes even more confused when Eugene arrives at the tent, because that brat is the one who will be in charge of the garbage. Clearly embarrassed, Eugene quickly makes it clear that he is not doing this to apologize to Ryota. He is only here because he was promised payment. Sato cannot understand how the kid plans to deal with all that trash by himself. But Eugene shows that he brought his own team to lend a hand. Even so, Ryota points out that the party members need to have at least one rank a stat. Celeste walks over to a board and shows him that her intelligence and luck meet the requirement, even if her drop rates are absolutely terrible. Impressed, Ryota asks whether the sorceress really intends to go with them on this mission. Celeste confirms that she does. They will be returning to Sekro soon, and she wants to help however she can after everything they have done for her. Soon, the trio heads to the first floor of Selen. Ryota is uneasy because they have not encountered a single monster so far. Emily explains that when the dungeon master is present, every other monster disappears. Suddenly, a sinister horn bursts through the ceiling, causing the dungeon itself to start collapsing. As the adventurers try to take cover, a creature emerges. Celeste recognizes it as a bighorn, a two-horned horse capable of corrupting nature itself. Emily tries to strike the beast with her hammer, but it is protected by a magical barrier that violently repels her. She is about to be trampled, and Ryota tries to stop it, but his bullets are also blocked by the shield. Luckily, Emily manages to get back on her feet just in time to avoid being crushed. Then the third member of the team steps in with the only spell she can cast, level 3 Inferno. It does not destroy the barrier, but it weakens it. Ryota notices this and fires at the bighorn's protection. Emily takes advantage of the opening and lands a devastating blow with her hammer. However, when Ryota fires again, the bighorn somehow restores its magical shield. So Ryota calls on Celeste, and the two decide to repeat the same attack sequence to break through the enemy's defense. Meanwhile, Eugene is at Sekro's headquarters, informing Duke and Neptune that Ryota Sato has entered the dungeon to fight the master. Neptune laughs, since he had already guessed Ryota would do something like this, but the leader of the expedition fears the worst. Back in the battle, the trio has managed to break the barrier and inflict more damage. But not only does the bighorn regenerate its shield once again, its body itself still looks completely unharmed. The humans, on the other hand, are burning through their energy. Celeste is suffering the most because of how much power her spell consumes. Then the horse begins casting a magical circle, which rapidly expands across the battlefield. Emily tries to stop it, but the moment she steps into the circle, she loses her strength and collapses to the ground. At the same time, Ryota Sato is hit with a debuff that lowers every one of his stats by 2 points, except for HP and strength. Emily manages to recover and lands a direct hit on the bighorn's barrier. Although she breaks the protection, the girl is thrown backward and takes heavy damage when she crashes into the ground. According to her, the enemy's magic circle reduced all of her attributes. And as for Celeste, she is completely out of mana. There is not enough left for her to cast even one more spell. Knowing that the sorceress is out of the fight, Ryota tells Emily to look after her and decides to finish the battle alone. Celeste apologizes for being dead weight, but Ryota tells her that she has already helped far more than she realizes. More importantly, he says that she herself matters far more than the power she can provide. She needs to rest. Celeste is deeply moved because nobody has ever said anything like that to her before. Quite the opposite, really. She had always suffered every kind of humiliation at work. Her boss used to say awful things like, "You should let us know before you get sick," or "If you are going to pass out, do it after work." Because she could only use one level 3 spell, Celeste had always considered herself inferior. She believed she deserved those insults. Then this guy named Ryota Sato suddenly appeared in her life and turned everything upside down with his unbelievable kindness. And with that thought in mind, Celeste refuses to sit there and rest. Instead, she forces herself back up and vows to give her life to win this battle. Then, somehow God only knows how she casts another inferno and destroys the bighorn's barrier. Emily throws her hammer to Ryota, who uses it to shatter one of the beast's horns with a powerful strike. The damage finally brings the monster down. Ryota begins celebrating, but then remembers that Celeste gave absolutely everything she had to cast the decisive spell. The poor girl can barely move, but when she hears that the dungeon master has been defeated, she starts crying with joy because she finally feels useful. Since the sorceress played the biggest role in their victory, Ryota, encouraged by Emily, insists on giving Celeste the Bighorn's Drop, a crossed horns item that allows her to use level 1 spells without restrictions. Unable to handle that much emotion, the grown woman bursts into tears right in front of everyone. After that unlikely journey, Ryota Sato has to report to the expedition leader that he defeated the dungeon master. Duke can hardly believe news that important, but just to be sure, he rushes off to check whether there have been any changes to the local ecosystem. When Neptune's teammates hear that Ryota defeated the master with only 3 people, they tell him that he truly has 2 amazing companions. Once the victory is confirmed, Ryota asks where Neptune is. His teammates just give him an awkward smile. Meanwhile, in an isolated location, Neptune confronts Harvard and blames him for robbing him of the chance to fight Sato because of Hetero's schemes. The next morning, Celeste uses the Bighorn's crossed horns to burn the trash with a much gentler flame than the one she had been forced to use before. After telling Ryota that this is basically a dream come true, the sorceress mentions that she heard the dungeon now belongs to Sekro. Ryota confirms it and adds that no changes were detected in Selen's ecosystem. It has been a pretty intense few days, but it is finally over. He should be heading back to his hometown tomorrow. And since they are already talking about it, Ryota invites Celeste to come with him. Ironically, at the exact same moment he says it, Celeste asks whether she can go with him. The two immediately get embarrassed, while Ryota admits that he was thinking of creating something silly, like Ryota's family. Celeste could not be more excited about it. With that in mind, Ryota now needs to ask Emily whether she is okay with it. But before he can, the girl suddenly appears out of nowhere and says she totally agrees with forming the Ryota family. Meanwhile, Eve had been on her own this whole time, and she was already sick of eating those dry, awful carrots that dropped everywhere. As usual, she wanted more. She wanted the carrots that only the low level could provide. Speaking of him, the young man arrives in Sekro with his new party member. While showing her around the city's street market, he spots some carrots at one of the stalls and wonders how Eve might be doing. In the middle of this, Urza approaches the group and warmly welcomes her friend Ryota. But the moment she notices a woman standing beside him, her expression immediately darkens as she asks who she is. When Ryota explains that Celeste is the newest member of the Ryota family, Urza is completely thrown off. She feels like her romantic progress with him has just taken several steps backward. Trying desperately to hide her frustration, she gets to the point. The clerk needs Ryota's help with the city's upcoming Harvest Festival, so she asks him to stop by the store later to hear the details. With that, she hurriedly runs off in an extremely suspicious way, while Ryota and Emily admit that they know nothing about this festival. Celeste promises to look into it. A few hours after Ryota splits up from the girls, they find him at the entrance to the Nihonium dungeon. After doing some research, Celeste and Emily explain that the Harvest Festival is a yearly event where people display all kinds of dungeon drops. In the end, those items are turned into lost creatures and defeated inside an arena. Changing the subject, the mage asks what Ryota is doing there. He explains that after the group went their separate ways, he stayed behind in the dungeon to raise his speed to rank S. However, since he reached that level far too quickly, he decided to head down to the 4th floor. After struggling a bit against the monsters there, he managed to obtain seeds that increase vitality. He gathered several of them, placed them in a box, and left them exposed to the air outside the dungeon in order to create lost creatures. And just like that, the seeds transform into several monsters. Without wasting a second, Ryota Sato charges straight at the mummies. Celeste panics, but Emily simply smiles without even watching the fight and reassures the mage that everything is fine. Naturally, that is enough to calm her down. After defeating the mummies, Sato obtains several restraining bullets, a new kind of ammunition that will definitely expand his range of strategies. Seeing this, Celeste admits she had no idea that lost creatures could drop items. Ryota reveals that he has not told anyone else about it and asks her to keep it a secret as well. She does not understand why he would trust her with that information, so Ryota explains that party members should trust one another. His words leave the mage slightly emotional. Then, the three of them hear a massive crash coming from Sekro and immediately rush back to the city. Once there, they learn that a rare lost creature has appeared and is tearing through the area. It is a terrifying and bizarre monster, basically a wrinkled sphere wearing a crown and shedding black tears. Celeste uses her inferno magic to weaken it, but the creature emerges completely unharmed from the powerful flames. Emily then charges in, but despite her strength, the monster's attack bends the handle of her hammer. With his teammate in trouble, Ryota uses his rank strength to launch the monster into the air. He then fires restraining bullets, magical bindings that lock the target in place and prevent it from moving. Once the creature falls to the ground immobilized, the adventurer combines 2 regular bullets and finishes it off for good. Afterward, he notices that it dropped a bag and puts it around his waist. Even with that good news, Emily has no reason to smile, since her hammer's handle is completely bent. Ryota suggests buying a new one the next day, but not wanting to spend money, the girl tries to fix it herself. She attempts to bend the handle back into shape, only to destroy it completely. At that point, she suddenly becomes much more open to the idea of buying a new weapon. That night, Eve hears from the people of Sekiro that Ryota Sato was once again responsible for defeating the rare monster. Of course, she does not care much about the city being saved. What matters to her is that her personal human carrot factory has returned. The next day, Ryota's family visits a weapons merchant named Smith. The man has an excellent business sense, and since he keeps up with everything happening in the city and its surroundings, there is no way he would not know Ryota Sato and his brave companions. He has also heard what the adventurers did in Selen, so as a way to promote his business, he decides to make Emily Brown a hammer for free. It will be ready in a few days. A day later, Ryota heads to Nihonium and meets Princess Margaret once again. Although one of her attendants is happy to see him, the news is not good. Unfortunately, the air boxes they have been producing are not selling very well, and they are already considering a new product. The man asks whether Ryota has any ideas. Ryota jokingly suggests selling the princess's underwear, since it would surely sell well, and their goal is to create a product closely associated with her. Both of them initially think it is a brilliant idea, but then agree that it might be difficult to pull off. Remembering Emily's interest in rings, and thinking that the item should match the princess's elegance, Ryota suggests selling rings instead. In the middle of their conversation, several monsters attack the princess and the group assigned to protect her. The guards are overwhelmed, so Ryota steps in with his revolvers and quickly puts an end to the situation. After saving the princess, he hears his new bag make a strange sound at his waist. Margaret is, of course, deeply grateful for his help. As thanks for both saving her and suggesting the rings, her attendant decides to give Ryota the first piece they produce for free. Ryota feels embarrassed by the offer, but the princess insists that he be the first to receive the product, so he eventually accepts. A few days later, Emily's hammer is ready. However, being completely honest, she thinks the weapon could be heavier and sturdier. Out of nowhere, Eve bursts into Smith's store like a madwoman, demanding to know where Ryota Sato is. Emily explains that he went to Nihonium, then planned to stop by Tululu, and finally visit Swallow's Gratitude, without even thanking her for the information. The rabbit girl rushes off in search of him. Meanwhile, on the first floor of Tululu, Ryota is happy about the bag dropped by that strange monster because it can automatically collect drops. Without it, Princess Margaret and her soldiers would have noticed that he is able to obtain items in the Nihonium dungeon. And speaking of Nihonium, Eve Callisleader searches every corner of the cave for the low level, but no matter where she looks, he is nowhere to be found. Refusing to give up, she heads to Tululu and then Swallow's Gratitude, but Sato is not in either place. Only some time later does the young man finally show up at the store to sell the items he collected, since Urza had asked him to come by. He also asks what favor she needs for the Harvest Festival. Handing him a list, Urza explains that she wants Ryota to be one of the people responsible for obtaining the rarest drops for the exhibition, since they would add a lot of value to the event. Naturally, Sato will be paid very well for the job. Right after that, Urza's co-worker gives the adventurer an advance payment of 40,000 pylos. He finds it strange that the money is all in such small denominations, so the clerks explain that the person responsible for getting money drops from the dungeon was arrested for corruption. Now, they have to make do with small coins. When Ryota hears that money literally drops in this world, he gets a brilliant idea. He heads to an isolated area and places a 20,000 pylo bill some distance away from himself, hoping it will turn into a lost creature. The plan works, and a bird appears. As expected, it immediately tries to fly away in a panic. just as desperate. Ryota empties his revolver's cylinder at the bird, but misses every single shot. He quickly switches to homing bullets and manages to take it down. The reward is a potion that raises the plant drop rank by 3 levels for 10 minutes. Obviously, it is not very useful to someone with a rankus drop rate, so Sato keeps it in case he ever needs it. Suddenly, in a mix of anger and relief, Eve appears and knocks him to the ground after searching for him all over the world. At last, she can finally get access to the low-levels delicious carrots. With no way out, Ryota is dragged to Tululu and basically forced to obtain a huge amount of carrots for the rabbit girl. Taking advantage of the moment, he asks why Eve does not simply get those items with a party of her own. She explains that not only are Ryota's carrots much better, but she also left her former party because of their different worldviews. While rabbits like her only care about essential items such as carrots, humans tend to focus too much on useless things like money, supplies, and weapons. Being completely honest, Eve believes that companions are nothing but trouble. That is why she prefers to stay alone most of the time. Of course, that ideology did not come from nowhere. To understand it, we are taken back to a memory from when she was younger. One day, while exploring the 16th floor of the Mangan dungeon as a child, Eve only wanted to eat meat and completely rejected vegetables. The other rabbit girls in her group tried to convince her to diversify her diet, but she did not want to listen to their lectures. She eventually moves away from the group so she can eat her meat in peace. Later that same day, after defeating a death buffalo by herself, instead of receiving meat as a reward, a young human boy suddenly appears. Naturally, confusion takes over for a while, but the two eventually begin to form a friendship. When another buffalo appears and Eve takes it down with her signature strike, the boy becomes fascinated and asks how she does it. From there, the two start working together as a team to hunt the buffaloes. That teamwork awakens a sense of companionship in Eve, something she did not fully understand at the time. Everything truly changes when one of the defeated monsters drops a carrot. Eve makes a disgusted face at the reward, but the little boy insists that she try it. He literally shoves half of the carrot into her mouth. From that moment on, Eve Callis-Leader's life changes completely. The fact that this boy introduced her to something so delicious is what earns him a special place in her heart. However, after everything they went through together in such a short time, the human boy suddenly disappears just as mysteriously as he appeared. Because of her childish mindset, Eve interprets this as proof that companions are always a waste of time. After hearing the story, Ryota admits that he thinks the rabbit girl is being a little too extreme. He also points out that if being around others is so painful for her, she could simply hunt carrots by herself. Eve explains that her drop rate is rank D. That means she gets very few drops, and the rank also affects their flavor. That is why the low levels carrots taste so much better. Ryota then remembers the potion he obtained earlier and gives it to Eve for free to try. Her drop rate rises to rank A, and now she can get what she loves most without relying on anyone else. Eve immediately tries her luck and receives her first drop with the special flavor of rank A. Once she tastes it, she realizes Ryota was telling the truth. It is easily the best vegetable she has ever obtained on her own. Since that is the case, she asks where she can buy more of those potions, because the effect only lasts 10 minutes. Ryota gives her the bad news: they probably are not sold anywhere. It was an item he dropped thanks to his rankus drop rate, so he might be the only person capable of finding another potion like it. Completely devastated, Eve Callis-Leader tries to overcome her trauma by making an unexpected offer to the human. Even after everything she has said, she wants to join Ryota Sato's party. According to her, companions are good from now on because they can find valuable potions and delicious carrots. She begs so intensely that Ryota accepts as if he is being robbed. Finally, to seal her entry into the group, Eve tells him that she loves him. When Ryota returns home with the rabbit girl, the first thing he sees is Emily's massive, sturdy hammer, very different from the one Smith had originally designed. Emily and Celeste ask what is going on, since a rabbit girl is clinging affectionately to Ryota. When he explains that Eve is now part of the family, Emily Brown throws her arms up in celebration, while Celeste cannot hide her shocked expression. After some time had passed, Ryota found Celeste suffering from a pounding headache caused by an approaching monostorm, a natural phenomenon that prevents people from using magic. As a mage, Celeste's head would throb painfully whenever one of these storms rolled in. So instead of heading back into the dungeon that day, Ryota decided to look for a special house where she would not feel so miserable during mana storms. The challenge now was finding a place that actually offered protection against this kind of phenomenon. Without wasting any time, the entire group headed to a house recommended by a real estate agent in Sekro. According to him, it had exactly what they were looking for. As soon as Celeste stepped inside, her headache noticeably eased. Happier than ever, she had no idea places with that kind of effect even existed. The agent explained that the house had been built using the latest mana storm shielding methods, making it incredibly comfortable for any magic user. As they looked around, Emily immediately fell in love with the spacious kitchen and asked how much the rent was. Since the entire property had been built with state-of-the-art technology, the agent said it would cost 400,000 pylos per month. Celeste and Emily were shocked by the price, but Ryota accepted immediately. The number one item on his list for a new home had been finding a place where both of his friends could smile. Besides, after seeing how much better Celeste felt just by stepping inside, he could no longer consider any other option. The decision was made. It was time to move. Just one day later, the group was already living in their new home when the mana storm finally passed. Even though they had barely had time to settle in, Emily had cleaned every single corner of the house until it was spotless. Celeste asked what they were going to do that day, but Eve suddenly showed up, grabbed Ryota, and announced that it was time to eat carrots. Ryota stopped the rabbit girl in her tracks and reminded her that the harvest festival was coming up. It would be better to follow the list of rare items Urza had given them and hunt monsters on Tululu's 7th floor. Still, not wanting Eve to look disappointed, he promised they would pick up some carrots along the way. Right then, Emily arrived with breakfast ready. Later, on Tululu's 7th floor, Ryota was surprised to see the entire area covered in snow. He never imagined something like that could exist inside a dungeon. Celeste explained that, depending on how they were designed, some dungeons had floors where it could snow. She got a little embarrassed when Ryota complimented her for being so knowledgeable. Further ahead, the group ran into that same old captain and his two apprentices, the poor guys who were constantly treated like garbage by him. However, unlike anything Ryota had seen before, the captain was deeply emotional. He was opening up to the boys, saying that throughout all those difficult adventures, he had suffered alongside them. According to him, it had all been worth it because they had grown so much. Moved by their leader's tears, the two subordinates hugged him. It was supposed to be a heartwarming moment, but Ryota could only think that the young men had probably been brainwashed. Suddenly, the group came across a pink slime with a small flame burning on its forehead. Ryota shot both of the creature's eyes, but after regenerating them, the slime grew an additional flame in each restored eye. Celeste explained that it was impossible to defeat a tenacious slime alone. This kind of monster becomes invincible when it is close to death and can no longer be harmed by the last person who attacked it. In other words, someone else has to deliver the finishing blow. With that explained, Celeste finished it off herself with a burst of fire magic. Since this was a floor designed to punish solo adventurers, she stressed that teamwork was the most important thing if they wanted to succeed there. The group then moved on to another tenacious slime. This time, Emily held it off while Ryota delivered the final blow. When the monster dropped a pile of onions, Eve made a disgusted face. All she needed in life was carrots. Emily, however, promised that she would make curry that night with potatoes, onions, and huge chunks of carrot. The rabbit girl was happy again in an instant. Ryota was amused by their conversation until a massive slime struck him in the face with enough force to send him flying several meters away. According to Celeste, this was an ultra-tenacious slime. It also required someone else to finish it off. But while in its near-death invincible state, it reflected every attack used against it. They would need to be extremely careful. With that said, Eve Callusleader stepped up and promised to take care of the monster, since she already knew its HP from killing one before. She rushed forward, landed a powerful blow in the center of the creature's head, and crushed it slightly. Then she backed away and told Ryota to finish the job. Without hesitation, Sato fired at the creature and took it down. Celeste explained that its drop was a rare stone that reflected certain attacks when equipped. To test their new item, the team returned to the dungeon's 2nd floor. Ryota let one of the slimes there attack him. At first, he had no idea what he was supposed to do, since the monster kept striking him over and over without dealing any damage. Then, after a few seconds of non-stop attacks, the slime died. They had discovered what the item did, but Ryota still believed it was far more practical to defeat enemies by attacking them directly instead of reflecting their attacks. With that in mind, he decided to sell the item to Urza. The festival was approaching, and she was in need of rare drops. The moment the clerk at Swallow's Gratitude picked up the stone, she could not contain her excitement and loudly announced that it was a slime tier, a very rare item from Tululu's 7th floor. Every adventurer nearby immediately turned to look. After all, she was talking about the floor of those incredibly stubborn monsters. Without a doubt, the merchant chose to buy it and paid the enormous sum of 3 million pylos. Not only would an item of that caliber restore customer confidence in her shop, but the Harvest Festival was also right around the corner, making rare drops far more valuable. Soon after, as Ryota's family left Swallow's Gratitude, a young girl entered the store in a desperate search for a new party. Unfortunately, no one paid any attention to her. Hours later, Ryota Sato was on Nihonium's 5th floor, fighting a terrifying red skeleton by himself. The creature was ridiculously fast and strong enough to seriously injure him, so Sato had to push himself to stay focused and make the most of his superior abilities. In the end, the skeleton may have been fast, but Ryota was still faster. That was the key factor that allowed him to gain a strategic position in the fight and land a kick that shattered the monster in half. The adventurer received a seed that granted 1 NP point. That would have been great if not for one simple problem. He had absolutely no idea how to cast magic. Still, not all hope was lost. In this world, money could solve a lot of problems. Using the 3 million pylos he had earned from the slime tier, Sato bought a special fruit that would grant its user a random spell once consumed. But, as usual, Ryota liked to gamble big with the things he obtained. Instead of taking the easy route and securing any random spell, he used the fruit to become a lost. There was a 50% chance that everything would go horribly wrong, but he still chose to move forward and test his luck. After leaving the fruit alone for a few seconds and waiting patiently, his boldness was rewarded by the appearance of a very unusual lost. It was a metal version of Ryota Sato himself. Ryota went head-to-head with the monster, but the opponent's metallic body gave it the advantage in a direct brawl. Ryota then tried to destroy it with gunfire, but it protected itself with its arms and prevented the bullets from piercing through. After assessing the situation during the fight, Ryota concluded that his metal copy possessed around 80% of his stats, making use of his slight advantage. He found an opening in the enemy's defense and shot it in the stomach, ending the confrontation. This time, it dropped a fruit that Celeste believed was identical to the previous one. Ryota, however, pointed out that it had a second marking on its skin, meaning there was a chance its effect had been doubled. After eating the fruit, the two met up with Emily in Tululu and told her that Ryota had learned 2 spells. One was level 1 Cutting Wind. The other was something Ryota felt a little embarrassed to talk about, since it was not particularly impressive. But because the girls wanted to know what it was, he chose a target to demonstrate it on. Soon, they came across a father slime and several smaller slimes. Celeste used Inferno to mercilessly wipe out the little ones, leaving only the adult slime alive. The monster took on a new form as it filled with rage, and Ryota used his second spell, Reserve. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Ryota then used a restraint bullet to immobilize the creature, giving Emily the chance to finish it off. The slime dropped a mountain of potatoes, making the little girl feel like her friend Yoda. Even so, Ryota believed the item was not very useful. He had to be close enough to cast the spell on the monster that would produce all those drops, and he already had an extremely high drop rate himself. However, Emily felt that she had leveled up after finishing the slime. That completely changed their view of the spell. If she had truly evolved, then this new ability would make it much easier for all of them to level up from now on. When they left the dungeon, Ryota found Urza carrying several heavy boxes down the street. He offered to carry them to Swallow's Gratitude. Once there, he met the little girl who had been desperately searching for a new party. By then, she had found none other than that Captain Ryota was not particularly fond of. Urza explained that the girl could only reach level 2, which made her undesirable to most parties in Sekiro. Hearing that, Ryota Sato stepped in front of the captain and declared that the girl would join his group instead. The little girl did not understand this sudden competition. No one had ever argued over her before. Seeing that things might escalate, Urza tried to convince the girl that joining Ryota Sato's party was a huge privilege. His team had earned the respect of the entire city. The adventurers around them backed up the merchant's words, emphasizing that Ryota's family was one of the most valuable teams around. Realizing that everyone was on Ryota's side, the captain walked away with his tail between his legs. The path was now clear for the child to choose her group. She introduced herself as Alice and shook hands with the leader of her new team, sealing the deal between them. To begin her new chapter in Ryota's family, Alice was taken to the status board at Nihonium's entrance, so her new leader could see what she was capable of. Honestly, Ryota was not very impressed by her extremely low stats. Still, he had brought her to this dungeon because he believed she could at least reach her second and final level there. As soon as they entered, Alice was overcome by a strong sense of nostalgia. Ryota had to ask why, since it was not something you heard from a child every day. Alice then explained that she had been born in a dungeon. When her mother was pregnant and close to giving birth, she had been working inside a dungeon when the baby simply came out. Impressed by her story, Ryota invited the unusual girl to hunt some monsters. Alice herself pointed out a small horde of skeletons in the distance, which surprised Ryota as well. She had spotted the creatures before he did. Either way, he trapped all the skeletons with a restraint bullet and asked his companion to defeat them using a large rock from the ground. Surely that would make her reach level 2, and that was exactly what happened. Alice smashed the skull of every monster, one by one, until they were all gone. With the training over, the pair stepped outside to see whether she had managed to level up. When Ryota saw that she had reached level 2, he did not seem especially happy. After all, the poor girl would never be able to go beyond that. Suddenly, Alice asked to return to the dungeon because someone named Bones had told her to come back quickly. Ryota had no idea what the hell she was talking about, but he followed her deeper into Nihonium. Once inside, Alice came across a female skeleton and said that Bones wanted to be defeated. Sato immobilized it with a restraint bullet while Alice finished the fight with a rock. After being defeated, the creature turned into a miniature version of itself, a tiny little skeleton girl who, according to Alice, would fight alongside them from then on. Naturally, Ryota still did not understand a single thing. After that, they went to Tululu's first floor, where Bones was able to show that, by transforming and increasing her size, she could defeat a slime all by herself. She suffered a small crack during the fight, but once she undid the transformation, Bones regenerated the damage. According to Alice, the little monster called her One-chan, meaning big sister, because both of them had been born in a dungeon. Putting that aside, Alice now needed to defeat Gelatina. While Ryota gave up trying to understand what was happening, a slime approached them for a fight. Bones charged at the monster and literally lost her head after getting hit. However, she caught her skull in midair and used it as a weapon to destroy the gelatinous little monster. With that, the slime also turned into a tiny miniature and joined Alice's team. Overjoyed, the child thanked Ryota Sato. Without his help, she would never have met her new siblings. When they arrived home, Ryota had to introduce the newest member of the team. Before he could do that, though, he saw Eve sitting at the table, eating a carrot burger and saying that she wanted to eat Ryota's carrots for the rest of her life. Ryota commented that it sounded like a marriage proposal, which visibly upset Emily. Meanwhile, Celeste could not take her eyes off the adorable little creatures sitting on the child's shoulders. She asked if she could pet them, but the poor things hid behind their big sister's neck. A little later, everyone sat down in the living room to properly introduce themselves. Ryota asked what the other members thought about letting Alice join the group. Celeste agreed immediately, but Eve seriously asked whether the girl liked carrots. When Alice said no, the rabbit girl allowed her to join. She simply did not want to compete with anyone for carrots on the team. Lastly, Emily gave her full approval not only for Alice joining Ryota's family, but for Bones and Gelatina as well.